A warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an absolutely excellent podcast for you guys. Joining me in segment number 2 is Ky McKeon. He does absolutely amazing work over at the three-man weave. He, Jim, and Matt are absolute aces when it comes to taking a look at this game that we all know and love. So we need to gather their thoughts as to what we're all seeing in terms of this great game of college basketball. Coupled with that, we're going to be getting just some of his thoughts on what we've been seeing trend-wise in college basketball. Going into the day on Wednesday, we had seen north of 57% of games going over in the last 10 days. It has been absolute wildfire there. We're going to ask him if he attributes it perhaps to these teams trying to be a little bit more impressive with regards to the net rankings, if that's been playing a little bit of impact with regards to this handicap. We're going to be taking a look at a little bit of the lay of the land with regards to the SEC as well. So we're going to have a nice wide-ranging conversation with Ky in segment number 2. And then in the final segment, we're going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. As per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really didn't get in any of those Twitter/X questions today, but we had a very fun day of college basketball Wednesday and have a little bit of cleanup from the Tuesday college basketball card as well. So let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, because the Greg Peterson Experience is on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, from midnight to 3 Eastern Time, I do need to record these recaps a little bit earlier. And prior to myself being able to get this podcast up, BYU versus Houston, it was still going on when I was recording this, and unfortunately that DK Network write-up pick did not hit. Hopefully the over in Washington versus Colorado is going to be able to get us right. You'll know when you're hearing this. As of right now, the game is yet to tip off just at the time of recording, so I do apologize about that, and we'll look to be better with our write-ups. Still entering into Wednesday, we're at 45 and 33 for the season, so doing relatively solid there, but last minute for BYU was a little bit less than savory, but at the very least they weren't UNLV, who lost 90-58 on their home floor to Air Force. I mean, good grief. That was just terrible. I mean, man, I know that there was some money coming in on UNLV. I know that there are some people calling for a conspiracy. If there was a conspiracy, not even UNLV would make it look that obvious. 5 of 28 from three-point range. Air Force went 14 of 28. I mean, UNLV was catching a falling knife for 1, as Ryan Petraeus had a triple-double. And for 2, they just gave a turd of a performance as well. So, I mean, that was a little bit less than savory to say the least, but what has been less than savory this season as well has been taking a look at VMI's defense, but seems to be rising up a little bit more. They've got back-to-back covers. They hang in there against ETSU, 74-73. So a team that had given up 100+ in back-to-back games, they're starting to get things a little bit more right for VMI. They were able to have Brandon Watkins go off for 21 points. There was a case where ETSU was pretty much leading the entire way, but became a little bit more nip and tuck. So I did find that to be a little bit fascinating. What else has been very fascinating is taking a look at what we're getting in the SEC as Georgia, they get the win, but they do not get the cover against LSU. 68-66 was the final in this one, as it's been a Georgia team that has been able to provide you with quite a few covers thus far this season. 10-8-1 against the spread, and it's an LSU team that's starting to heat up a little bit as well for Georgia. They just weren't able to knock down their threes in this one, just 5 of 17 from distance. Meanwhile, LSU goes 10 of 23 from three-point range. For Georgia, the man that was able to help them be able to get to victory, 15 big points out of Silas Demery. He's been able to come up big for this team, and then you did see literally minutes before the game, Kadari Richmond get ruled out for Seton Hall, and Seton Hall was unable to close late. They were actually up in this game by 10 with about 12 minutes remaining, and then they made like your buddy at the bar and could not close. Providence gets the win by a count of 67-63. Providence has been quite a good under team thus far this season as well. This was a total of about 134.5, so another under hits for Seton Hall and Providence. They both go 16 of 17 at the free throw line. Seton Hall wins the rebound battle 39-32. They win the turnover battle 14-12. Unfortunately for them, Providence was able to do a really good job of knifing the ball inside, and for the Seton Hall team, they just couldn't take advantage of their 2-point shots. They go 16 out of 49 from inside the arc, so that was a little bit of a rough one for them. The Notre Dame unders have been quite hot this far this season, and this was another one. Miami, they get the win and they get the cover by a count of 73-61. This is a game that very much went harmlessly under the total. And you're looking at this Notre Dame team, they have now played to the under about 70 or so percent of their games, actually 73.7%, 14 unders to 5 overs. As for Miami, they did have Noche O'Meara be a little bit banged up in the previous game. He was back for this one, and boy, did they need him. 33 points, 10 boards, comes up with an absolutely massive performance to be able to get Miami that win and cover. And Virginia, they were able to get the win, and on most numbers they were able to get a cover. This was an opening number more around about 4 or 4.5. I think they closed in a lot of places more around a 5.5, 59-53. Game stays under despite going to overtime against an NC State team that has played north of 61% of their games to the over, by the way. But for NC State, they go just 4 of 14 from 3-point range. The saying of the underdog goes to die in overtime, that was very much apparent here as Ryan Dunn, 13 points, 12 rebounds, and a Virginia team that's been an absolute disaster on the glass this far this season. They win the rebound battle 54-32. So quite a reversal there. One of the top under teams in all of college basketball played a rare over as South Florida versus Temple. Give our road to Lane Kiffin goals. That goes the way of South Florida, 75-69. Most places had a closing total more in the neighborhood about a 143, 143.5. So this one just barely squeaks over. But for South Florida, Kashawn Pryor, he was able to take hold of this game. 20 points, 10 rebounds, and for South Florida, 10 of 22 from 3, 19 of 21 at the free throw line. It was a sloppy game for them. They lose the turnover battle 15-10, but for Temple, they're now 8-12 straight up, and this Temple team has been absolutely lighting your money on fire this season. I thought that Adam Fisher was going to be able to do a little bit of a better job. 6-11-2 against the spread for them, so that has been relatively awful. For Iowa, they had went 30 straight games at home with 75 plus points. They have now failed to get to 75 plus in each of their last two. Maryland goes on the road and they get a 69-67 win at Carver Hawkeye Arena as Maryland all of a sudden was able to find it from 3-point range. 7 of 15 from distance. Jameer Young, 22 points, 7 rebounds. And for Iowa, they go just 3 of 14 from 3. Maryland ran them off the 3-point line. Turnover ratio was pretty much the same for both teams, 14 apiece. And for Iowa, they actually do win the rebound battle. They had 14 points, 9 rebounds out of Owen Freeman. But Maryland gets the job done. So that was a pretty tremendous showing there. Out there in the Atlantic 10, we've been seeing a lot of craziness out there. We've talked about that conference quite a bit on this podcast, but Richmond now 14-4-1 against the spread. A lot of places close this as a 7.5-point line with Richmond laying it. So on a lot of places you were just barely able to get a cover, though shouldn't have been quite this sweaty. Richmond was up 70-56 with about 6 minutes remaining. They win by a count of 82-74 for Richmond. 12 of 23 from 3-point range. They are one of the top 5 teams in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. 7 turnovers in this one. Jordan King, 30 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds. Good showing there. Davidson, they've had a tough time covering thus far this season. They're hovering right in that neighborhood, about 9-8 against the spread, but they took it to a St. Louis team that's been having a rough season. 84-61 the final as for St. Louis. 4 of 26 from 3-point range. My goodness gracious. Sincere Parker is back for the team. Coming off the bench, 10.6 rebounds. When he's at full capacity, he should be able to help out the team a little bit more, but man, been relatively rough for them. And Samford had one of the nation's longest winning streaks get snapped. They lose to Furman by a count of 78-68. This was a total of 167 after that really went under the total as Samford was just completely swallowed up in this one. They actually win the turnover battle 18-17, but for Furman, they were able to win the rebound battle 41-35 with Marcus Foster, 22 points, 11 rebounds. It has still been a relatively good cover team for old Sam Amford as they're now 11-7 against the spread, and it's been a Furman team that's been all over the place. They've already lost to a non-D1 school, but they were able to get it done in that one. One of your best cover teams that was in action on Wednesday was actually the men of Troy, and Troy does it again against Texas State, 78-65 the final. Troy now 12-4-1 against the spread. They were laying 8.5 points, and this was a game that was pretty much tied up with about 12 or so minutes remaining, and then Miley Rigsby happened. Rigsby was able to chip in their 20 big points for the squad. Troy goes 7 of 17 from 3-point range, and for Texas State, they lose the turnover battle 15-13. They lose the rebound battle, and it's just been a relatively rudderless and strange Texas State team to say the least. James Madison in that same conference, they've been a good cover team, 12-6-1 against the spread, and you know who's not been a good cover team? Old Dominion, and Old Dominion gets paced it once again. Shock, surprise, surprise. 78-62 the final. I mean, you really do feel for these kids kids over there at Old Dominion. Jeff Jones, their coach, I know he's been going through some health issues. He's out for the entirety of the season. But for James Madison, masterclass in this one. They go just 10 of 27 from three-point range, but they win the turnover battle. They win the rebound battle 44-37 as CJ Bickerstaff, 12 points, 12 boards. And then Julian Wooden, a little bit of a forgotten guy on the team. He was able to supply 23 big points in this one, so they were able to get it done. Alabama, they take it to an Auburn team that was looking like one of the best teams in all of college basketball, and this one was right next to the number. Alabama, they close in a lot of places between about 2.5 to 3-point favorites, 79-75. They get it done against Auburn. Alabama had a very big first half. They were up 44-30 out of the break. Auburn was able to make a nice rally, but Auburn just couldn't hit shots on the St. 5 of 25 from distance. Really the best defensive effort that we've seen from Alabama in quite some time, with Grant Nelson stepping up in a big way, 14 points and 11 rebounds. And we all know about the scoring of Mark Sears. How about 22 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals. He made his impact in a wide variety of ways. And Florida Atlantic, they finally get a cover out there in American Conference play. They were laying between about 12 to 12.5. It looked like they were going to run and hide with this game, but thanks to some late game fouling, they were able to get the job done. That's by a count of 69-56 as Rice just ran out of gas and they just ran out of shots. 7 of 24 from three-point range, by the way. Second game all season against a team outside the SWAC, the Southland, and the D2 level that Rice gave up fewer than 80 points. As Florida Atlantic, they've been really having defense elude them all season long. Very good defense in this one. They win the rebound battle 43-34. A very encouraging sign, in my opinion, for Florida Atlantic. And this is a team that's been able to cover for you all season long. Unable to do so, though, on Wednesday. As Southern Illinois, they were laying about 13.5 against Valparaiso. Number got a little bit too big, 75-69. They get the win, but no cover, so they're now 13-4-1 against the spread. For Valparaiso, they've actually been playing a little bit of better basketball recently, going 7 of 18 from three-point range. And Valparaiso was able to get Cooper Schweiger going for 20 points, 7 rebounds, and Xavier Brown, one of your top scorers in all of college basketball, 20 points, 5 assists. And Indiana State, they've been a good cover team as well. They fall to 12-6 against the spread, win but no cover against Illinois Chicago, 89-83. As for Illinois Chicago, they go 11-26 from three-point range. UIC, one of the best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. Yet Isaac Swope, he was able to go 6-16 from three-point range. He went for 30 points. We have a little bit of cleanup to do on the podcast tomorrow because the rest of these games, they're all still in progress. We've got a few interesting ones, to say the least, unfolding. Missouri State and Drake. Looks like Missouri State is going to pull that game off in double overtime. A Drake team that's about 10-8 against the spread. They're going to take the L there. St. John's currently up 47-39 over Villanova. And then DePaul right now getting pasted by Marquette. Shock, shock, surprise, surprise there in Arkansas. Shock, shock, surprise, surprise. They're right now losing big to Ole Miss. Sort of saw that one coming. And right now, if you're taking a look at all the trends that we are seeing in college basketball, the overs, they just continue to be hot. Over the last 7 days, hitting at a 56.1% clip with some games from Wednesday pending. 160 overs, 125 unders with home underdogs just really taking it on the chin. 39, 53, and 2 against the spread over the last 7 days. Favorites overall going 53.5% against the spread, and road teams have been covering at about a 51.5% clip over the last 7 days. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the entirety of the college basketball season, 619 overs, 1,501 unders. That is a 51.9% hit rate to the over. Home underdogs hitting at 49.3%, 396, 408, and 15 against the spread. And overall, home teams are still hitting at 50.7% against the spread, but has been a little bit rough for them last week or so. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Wednesday. Coming up next, we talk with Ky McKeon a little bit about the SEC landscape, a little bit about what we're seeing with these overs and these favorites all hitting, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man, Ky McKeon. He does absolutely tremendous work over at the 3-Man Weave, which you're able to follow on Twitter/X at the number 3MW_CBB. Ky is out there in the Midwest doing absolutely amazing work, taking a look at this game that we all know and love. He was one of the co-founders of the 3-Man Weave, coupled with that, doing great work over at Action Network, the Field of 68, and so much more. And to be able to follow Ky on Twitter/X, that is at the letters KNY and underscore, and then the number 3MW altogether. And Ky, great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you for joining me, and congratulations on your appearance on the Mark Titus Show as well. I know that you've been making a few appearances over there, so always nice to see some shine going to you, Ky. And Ky, I know you have been shining when it comes to taking a look at this great game of college basketball, but something else that has really been shining has been the amount of overs that we have been seeing. Now, we're recording this more around Tuesday night, so the last 7-day number is going to be varying a little bit, but going into Tuesday, we had seen an over rate over the last about 7 to 8 days of north of 57.5%. What have you been making out of this? Because typically we see things slow down a little bit with regards to conference play. Familiarity takes hold, but this is really the second straight year where in late January, early February, we've been seeing a big giant binge of overs.
Yeah, it's efficiency. It's the highest it's ever been through this point in the season. Ken Pom always tracks it, and he's tracked it for since 1997. He's looked at it through this day of the season, and yeah, it's efficiency. Teams are hitting shots. They're getting to the free throw line. They're not making mistakes. They're just scoring a lot. Tempo is on the higher end of the spectrum in terms of history, but we've seen faster years quite a bit of times, actually. So it's not really the tempo, it's the efficiency, and that's always the hardest thing to predict is will teams make shots on any given night. Right now they are. The reason being, not sure. Players getting better, overall higher talent in the country. Everyone's very, very much accustomed to the new three-point line by now after so many years. Who knows? But yeah, right now overs are hitting. I'm not sure it'll continue forever. But yeah, if you've been eating on overs so far, it's been good.
Yep, and heck, I mean, for those that have been betting the NBA, those have dried up a little bit more in recent weeks, but we saw a bunch of overs to early part of the season there as well. And how much do you look at it conference by conference? Because what I've noticed is that a lot of teams that went under in past years, they've now been going a little bit more over. Like a team like a Tennessee has been hitting north of 60% of their games to the over. We certainly have been seeing the SEC in general, just having more teams be able to hit shots. How much do you think is it a little bit of a reaction to, man, we really stunk on offense last year, we need to address this, and sometimes it just becomes a little bit of overcorrection for some of these teams?
Yeah, you bring in players that are offensive minded, and you need to address that in the season. Also, it could just be a regression to the mean. Yeah, last year, the SEC was not an efficient league, 17th among conferences in the country. This year, 13th, so slightly better, but the tempo is up across the board for a lot of these teams. Yeah, Tennessee, they're playing a much faster tempo. That's smart. Dalton Connect, you get him in the program, and Ziegler back from injury, and it's smart that Barnes has gone to a faster tempo. You're seeing several teams play ultimately faster, and they have better shooters, frankly, this year, the SEC. Their three-point percentage was brutal last year, and it's definitely improved this season.
Absolutely. And speaking of the SEC, there was a team that mutually we were both very high on coming into the season, and that'd be Mississippi State, a Mississippi State team that prior to the season they were without Tolu Smith in non-conference play. They've been able to get him back in the fold. And I mean, in my opinion, for Mississippi State, it hasn't been like an absolute triumph for them. It certainly has been far from any sort of disappointment either. What have you made out of them, along with really the SEC in general? Because I look at this conference and I would really put those big, I would say 3 teams is probably that line of demarcation. Obviously, we've been seeing some tremendous play, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then you're able to throw in there a few others as well. But that said, with regards to the SEC, what have you been making out of they along with Mississippi State? Because I do think that the top end of the conference has really shown well this season.
Yeah, it's a great league. Several teams here, I think, are title contenders nationally. Yeah, Mississippi State, hard to tell right now. They haven't really gotten off to a good start in conference play, but they've played 3 of the best teams in the league. They've played Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky already. So their defensive numbers don't look great. I don't know if that's because, they all of a sudden have turned into a poor defensive team, or it's the fact they've played pretty stiff competition in conference play. I tend to lean towards the latter. I do think their offense will start to come around a little bit more. They're off to a poor start on that end as well. Free throw shooting has been a big issue for them. I'm not sure that's necessarily fixable, but they have to get their guards going. They're talented guards they brought in, like Josh Hubbard, like Trey Fort. Those guys really need to step up, and I think they will. Chris Jans, for my money, one of the best coaches in the country. I think he'll get them on the right track as conference play goes along.
Absolutely, and the team I was bringing on a little bit before when it comes to that SEC Big Three, Auburn, who has been just very good on both the offensive and defensive side of things, as Ky McKeon, who does absolutely tremendous work over at the 3-Man Weave, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and that is one of those teams I've been very impressed with this season. I thought that Auburn was going to be good. I thought that they could be towards the top 3 of the SEC. I didn't think that they would quite be starting off 16-2. I didn't think that they'd be quite this well-rounded, quite this amazing, pounding teams into oblivion, both on offense and defense. And there's certainly a team that I've had to make a little bit of an adjustment on, or a few teams for you personally that you've been looking at them the last few weeks, and it could be to the positive or the negative, because certainly we've had a lot of disappointments out there. But are there a few teams that you take a look at and you've had to adjust quite a bit from the start of the season on them?
SMU comes to mind in terms of just expectations at the start of the season. I wasn't a huge Rob Lanier guy. I still am not a huge Rob Lanier guy coming into the year, their head coach. But they've proven me wrong. They've done nothing wrong this season. Even in the non-con portion, their record wasn't outstanding, but they played really good teams really close. So they lost to Dayton close, Wisconsin close. They lost at A&M, which is no big deal. And they even played Arizona State close too. So this team's impressed me. They've shown an ability to blow teams out, which is certainly an indication of a good team. And really, they should have beaten Memphis at Memphis. So this team's a lot better than I thought. Getting some talented transfers in and actually coming together unexpectedly. Like Chuck Harris, for instance, is thriving this season after coming over from Butler after not having a very good year with Butler. They've really started to hit on all cylinders. So I've been impressed by them.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by SMU as well. A top 20 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Offense still a little bit of a work in progress, so Chuck Harris has been able to drain some threes, and this team defensively has been quite impressive. And I've personally been finding quite a bit of success betting the American Conference. It's been outside of those games involving SMU because they have been just pounding teams with their defense. A lot of overs involving teams like UTSA and company, and we certainly have seen it with Florida Atlantic, a team that just has not been able to do a very good job of being able to cover spreads out there in the American going into this week. They had yet to cover a spread in conference play. How much do you think that perception for a team like a Florida Atlantic is right now following them and causing them to be a little bit overvalued in the market?
I think they are overvalued just from a name recognition perspective, but still a really good team. I'm not sure why they're struggling so much on defense, because that's really the end that's driving it. Could be just complacency, frankly. This is a Final Four team that brought everybody back. These guys know they're good. They beat Arizona on a neutral floor this season. They've hung with everybody, with really, really elite teams. They know they're good. They know they're better than this league, but that can lead to complacency on the defensive end, and something's not right there. I think Dusty May will figure it out. They've been able to outscore opponents, and frankly, they've gotten a little bit lucky in some of these games, but hopefully they kind of wake up and turn it around in conference play. Would hate to see something weird happen and then end up missing the tournament due to 2 bad losses in the non-con. I don't think it'll happen. They have enough on their resume, but we definitely want this team in the field.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a Florida Atlantic team that, to your point, the offense has still been tremendous, but it's been the defense that has really been letting them down. So we will see if they're able to come back to the forefront, because that's what really led them to the Final Four, being a team that was in the top 40 nationally in terms of both offensive and defensive efficiency. As joining me on the show, we do have Ky McKeon. He does absolutely tremendous work over at the 3-Man Weave. Joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we are doing this for the Thursday podcast. And certainly we're not going to be seeing a lot of ranked teams going at it on Thursday. And if Arizona stubs their toe against Oregon State, that would be something that would go horribly, horribly wrong. But that said, in terms of the Pac-12, with a few games for Wednesday, a little bit unknown as we record this, how do you take a look at this conference? Because going into the week, we had a 3-way tango up there. First place was obviously Arizona there, but also Oregon and Arizona State. And it just feels like a conference in general that the clear top team, despite the fact that they've dropped a few games, is Arizona. But I think past that, it's just a hodgepodge of teams like Colorado, Utah, Oregon, that it just feels like they haven't found an identity yet.
Yeah, Arizona's the class of the conference by far. It's not even close. And then there's a bunch of, I would say, good, not great teams. I like Utah, kind of like Colorado. I like Oregon. But they're not fantastic teams. They're not elite. Stanford has certainly talent. That's kind of the story with them every single year. But Jared Haas still roams the sidelines, so they're going to struggle and underachieve. Same story with Washington. I like Washington State, but they sort of lack some talent, and they've had some pretty tough results lately. The league's just not great. It's by far the worst power conference, in my opinion. Arizona's really holding them up. I think they'd be even further behind the ACC, obviously, if Arizona wasn't there. But yeah, Arizona State, they're a pretender. They'll get knocked down in the standings eventually here. I think Arizona's going to end up running away with it.
Yeah, but I do think that Arizona State versus Oregon game could really be a game where we start to see that regression coming in for Arizona State, a team that, they've had a nice start to Pac-12 play, and Bobby Hurley just seems to always get his team to Dayton. they can't get any further than Dayton, but they always seem to get to Dayton. And they might be on the same trajectory this year as well. And I do think that it is really interesting that we talk about the Pac-12, because I take a look at the Mountain West right now. And if I was looking just 1 through 11, 1 through 12 with regards to these conferences, I would say top to bottom, the Mountain West is a better conference. Obviously, they don't have a team quite like Arizona. That's very clear. But I'm not sure how you take a look at and compare and contrast these two conferences. But if I were to pick a conference right now that would get more teams into the field and is just more balanced overall, I would go with the Mountain West right now.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you. Their top 6 or so is really good. And even UNLV is good, too. Nevada's been impressive. They've fallen off a little bit in conference. Still think they're a pretty good team. But the top of the league, San Diego State, of course, off that national title run, they're excellent once again this year. New Mexico's been super impressive. Colorado State has been good. Utah State, Danny Sprinkle, what he's done there, bringing in an entire new roster, has been super impressive. And then even Boise State, the team that everyone forgets about every single year, they're right at the top of the standings. So hopefully this league gets 4 bids. I think that's pretty realistic. They could certainly get 5, but they deserve representation this year in the tournament.
Yep, they certainly do. As Ky McKeon, he's always represented on this podcast. He does tremendous work over at 3-Man Weave. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're doing this in a little bit in advance, so we don't have any numbers on this game. But I do want to get your thoughts on one game for Thursday, because it's not very often that you see an unranked Gonzaga team. First time in about an eon that we're seeing this, and this could legitimately be their second toughest test out there in the WCC. I think that St. Mary's has been able to balance out after a relatively rough start to the season. They're looking like St. Mary's. Once again, they plowed San Francisco over the weekend, but the Dons, after that loss, they now go on the road to the Kennel to face off against Gonzaga. How do you view this matchup? Because I feel like for Gonzaga, and in terms of their at-large hopes, they absolutely need to win this game, because I do think that if they lose this one, there's a very realistic chance that Gonzaga could be finding themselves on the bubble on Selection Sunday. And really, outside of St. Mary's, the only other quality team with regards to resume is San Francisco, although I will say Santa Clara has knocked off 3 Pac-12 teams, but the bad loss is right now holding them back.
Yeah, Gonzaga definitely needs this game. They know it. They know the net formula, and that includes winning by margin. So I think, they'll do everything in their power to make a statement here. San Francisco, solid team. They haven't really beaten anybody. They beat Minnesota, but aside from that, they haven't beaten any other team in the top 100 this year in KenPom. They've lost some close ones to some good competition for sure, but they have not proven they can beat elite teams. They've played a pretty weak overall. I think it's ranked 300th in KenPom, so not great. Doesn't mean they're a bad team. They definitely are a good one. Mobo has been fantastic for them. He's an NBA player, but I think when they step up in competition to a St. Mary's or a Gonzaga, I just don't think they're quite at that level. And Gonzaga's really handled in the last few years in the Kennel. I tend to think they will again on Thursday.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned something a little bit in passing there. You were mentioning that Gonzaga probably wants to win this game by margin because of the net rankings. And we were leading off this discussion talking about these teams and the fact that, we have been seeing a lot more overs recently in college basketball. Do you think part of it has been due to the net and based on the way that things are formulated? Because I personally, just in watching all these games, have been noticing that the walk-ons don't come in quite as early, and teams do try to put their pedal to the metal just a little bit more in the back half of games. And I do think that could be a big reason why we have been seeing a lot more of these overs.
Yeah, it certainly could be. There's a lot of smart coaches out there, and they know that winning by more points equals better analytical rankings or predictive metrics, which goes into seeding. But yeah, ultimately it'll affect your net rating, which, still a black box formula, but definitely important still for the NCAA tournament. I definitely think there's coaches aware of that. I know of a few for sure that are doing it, and I bet it's pretty widespread across the country.
Yep, I think so as well, and I'm so glad that we'll bring it full circle there, Ky. And Ky, you're doing a very complete job over there at the 3-Man Weave. You do an amazing job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. You, Matt, and Jim do absolutely excellent work, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we are at 3MW_CBB on Twitter. You can find our YouTube channel, 3-Man Weave. We will be doing our Best Bet show there, as well as our weekly podcast there every Wednesday.
Awesome. And Ky, he does an absolutely tremendous job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins this podcast, he lends amazing insights, much like he did today. So big thanks to Ky for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some big shots. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ky McKeon, does excellent work over there at the 3-Man. We've taken a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins this podcast, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter as he, along with Jim, able to throw in their Matt, all three of those guys over at the 3-Man Weave. They do absolutely excellent work, and it's always a pleasure to get any of those three aboard today. Here's our good friend Ky. So, big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at JNet_D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games from the bigger conferences first, and then the games that involve these smaller conferences. This includes the Atlantic Sun, the MEAC, the SWAC. If Chicago State were on the board, which they are not, maybe down there, the Big South, the Patriot League, the America East, the NEC. We have hit all of them, I believe. Those are going to be at the bottom. So let's get things started with the earliest game of 7:47-7:48. Campbell plays host to Elon. Elon finds themselves as an underdog of 3 points. Your totals between 142.5 and 143. Did set my total 140. Looking at the under, you've got a Campbell team that is in the bottom 40 in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, and it's an Elon team that has been rough with their defense. They're outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but I just flat out don't think that they're going to do their part with this total. They have scored 72 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, and it's an Elon team that really got off to a nice 3-point shooting start to begin the season. They're starting to fade away. They're currently shooting about 36.5% from distance, but in conference play, this is dipped below 34%. You still have a quartet of guys that are giving you at least 10 points per contest. You've got someone like a Nick Dorn who's been able to give you about 10.5 points on 37.5% 3-point shooting, and then from there it's Max McKinnon along with Rob Higgins and TK Simpkins who have been able to combine for between the three of them about 35.5 points per contest. They all give you between 2.4 and 3.2 assists per game, so relatively good balance there, but this is an Elon team that, while they do a relatively solid job of being able to shoot it from 3-point range, they absolutely give up the arc, and while their 3-point shooting percentage has faded on offense, on defense they have continued to be aggressive with regards to allowing threes. They are well outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, this is a Campbell team that they themselves do have their warts with regards to their perimeter defense as well, and Anthony De La Rosa has to do a little bit of everything. They've been having him be able to supply about 17 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, so he's had to do it all. And for Campbell, most of their 3-point shooting woes, those come on the road. They allow opponents to shoot 36.1% from 3, have been relatively locked down at home at about 26.8% from distance. Coupled with that for Campbell, now you're starting to get a little bit more out of Laureanis, hopefully I said that correctly, Vesterius, who's been able to chip in there a little bit over 10.5 points. He's now shooting 40.5% from 3-point range. It is a Campbell team that has nobody other than Del Rosso, who's giving you north of 4.1 rebounds per game, so that's a little bit rough for them. But at the same time, you take a look at this bunch in Elon, and this has been one of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Of your 362 Division I teams, Elon clocking in at 247, so that Achilles heel of Campbell not doing an amazing job on the glass at 287, not going to be exposed in this game. So did set my line at 4, going to be willing to lay the number. I think that Campbell does a nice job slowing this game down. It's a Campbell team that has allowed now 69 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, so going under and willing to lay up to 3.5 points with Campbell made them a 4-point favorite. 749, 750 on the betting board. Appalachian State plays us to Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, an underdog of 16.5 points, 142 to 144.5 is your total, and with my total, I did set this at a 142, so going to be looking at 143 plus under. Got a Georgia Southern team that has been certainly giving it up. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Appalachian State, top 35 defense in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's not like this Appalachian State team is going out there and just absolutely lighting it up from 3-point range. This team is shooting less than 32% as a collective, but you've got good versatility as you've got Donovan Gregory, who's able to give you about 12.5 points, 3 assists, a steal, 5 boards on 35.5% three-point shooter. Trayvon Spillers, a 6'7" gentleman. He doesn't pop threes, but does a good job down low, leading the way with about 13.5 points, 8.5 boards, and a block and a half per contest, while Justin absent. He is your main defensive presence. 2.7 blocks, 6.5 boards, and 7.5 points per game. You've got a Georgia Southern team that they're just not going to be able to match up with this. Last year, they had Carlos Curry doing a solid job supplying the team with 7 rebounds per game. He's just disappeared for the team this year. I have no idea what's going on there, but it's led to Georgia Southern being 331st in all of college basketball. In terms of their overall rebound rate, you have been able to have Tyron Moore be able to give you more. 15 points, 3 assists, shooting 41% from 3 for a bunch that they do shoot in that neighborhood about 36% from 3-point range, but they do have to go up against an Appalachian State team that's done a really good job of locking it down from distance. 45th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Georgia Southern, 307th. And I don't think that Georgia Southern is going to be giving up a billion threes. And getting back Eugene Brown, when he's been out there, has been solid. He's been able to give you about 8 points per contest, has dealt with injuries all throughout the season, began his career at Ohio State, but just expected a little bit more out of him. You really don't have much down low other than Avante Parker giving you 5 rebounds per game. And with the way that Appalachian State is really firing all cylinders on defense, this team has given up 68 points or fewer in every one of their games here in the month of January. That includes a game against James Madison. And with the way that Georgia Southern has been all over the place with regards to their offense, they themselves have actually given up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. I do think that you get a little bit of a slog, so semi-total at 142 looking at the under. But I do think that this is going to be App State domination. Set them as an 18-point favorite, so want to lay with App State to go along with that under. 751, 752 on the betting board. Monmouth hits the road to face off against Stony Brook. Stony Brook, a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 144.5 and 145.5. With Stony Brook, I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. So here at the deuce, going to be one to lay the number. It is a Stony Brook team that certainly has their warts defensively, well outside the top 275 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. And this is a Monmouth team that is able to light it up from 3. You've got Xander Rice, a top 15 scorer in all of college basketball, giving you a little bit over a steal, 3 assists, 21.5 points on 37% three-point shooting. And actually, your best three-point shooter for the team is Abdi Bashir Jr., who's been able to shoot 51.5% from 3-point range. Now, can be a little bit all or nothing. In the last 5 games for this team, he has scored 9, 0, 5, 8, and 14 points, so you don't know what you're going to be getting there, but you know that this guy is able to light it up from 3-point range. But what I think is going to be a big pitfall for this Monmouth team is that they don't necessarily do a great job rebounding. You do have Jack Collins, who does a little bit of everything, 6.5 boards, 11 points per game. Nika Kotsanatsovsky, hopefully I said that correctly, 7.5 rebounds per game as well. But this is a Monmouth team that overall they're about 255th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Not saying that the Stony Brook team is anything amazing themselves. They're more around 207th, but you do have some good versatility with this team. You've got the likes of Andre Snoddy, along Charles Mado, being able to combine for 13 rebounds per game. And then Keenan Fitzmaurice, he's a 7-footer that's able to shoot about 31% from 3, supplying 10 points, 4.5 boards. And then the duo of Aaron Clark, Tyler Stevenson Moore. These two guys have been able to give you more, 26.5 points per contest between the two of them. Both generate a CO per contest. It is a Stony Brook team that is well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but so is this Monmouth team. And I do think that for Stony Brook, they're going to do a nice job being able to get this game slowed down a little bit more in regulation. They've allowed 71 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, it is a Monmouth team that has been getting gashed quite a bit, 77 plus points surrendered in each of their last 3 games. So I do think that with Stony Brook, they're going to do a solid job against a Monmouth team that really doesn't have a lot down low. And Monmouth, they themselves are certainly giving up the 3 ball as well. They're about 123rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. So did set my line at 2.5. Here at the deuce, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Stony Brook, and did set my total at a 142.5. I do think that both of these teams go a little bit cold with their 3-point shooting, and both of these teams outside the top 230 in terms of total possessions per game. So looking at the under, and going to be willing to lay up to 2 with Stony Brook, 753, 754 on the betting board. It is the College of Charleston, and they put us Hampton. Hampton is a home underdog of 13 to 13.5 points with your total 161 to 161.5. I made Charleston a 13.5 point favorite, so you're at the 13, which is mostly what I'm seeing. It's a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's a Hampton team that has just been an almighty wreck, and I thought that when Jordan Nesbitt was coming back in the fold that they'd be able to help out this Hampton team. He was their top scorer last year with about 13.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and he's looked a little bit better recently, but in 11 games back, he hasn't been the Jordan Nesbitt that we saw a season ago. 9 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, shooting 34% from three-point range, has been able to give the team double figures in 3 out of the team's last 4 games, but has also been turning the ball over quite a bit, as well as he's averaging north of 3 turnovers per contest in this span as well. So you've got a lot of issues there for Hampton team as well, outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're turning the ball over 13.7 times per game, and they're outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Karius Mullen has actually been quite solid down low. 14 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, but nobody is there to help him out, and just really nobody is there for Hampton to be able to guard the three-point arc. They are well outside the top 275 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. You look at their overall defensive efficiency, they're clocking in 341st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, this Charleston team is not the same as they were a season ago as well, about 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and now they're just trying to really go at warp speed. This team has given up at least 78 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Offense has been able to ascend quite a bit, but it's not like they're an amazing three-point shooting team. They only turned the ball over 10.8 times per contest, which for their tempo is actually really good, but they're shooting 31.5% from three-point range. You do have a pair of guys in Rain Smith along Kobe Rogers who have been able to combine for about 37.5% three-point shooting between the two of them, a little bit north of 20 points per contest. And CJ Fullerton, he does give you 4 assists, but he's only been able to chip in there 4.5 points per contest. Ante Brazovic at 6'10" has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and even though it's a Charleston team that has been a little bit wobbly, I do think that they're finding their footing just a little bit. No shame in losing to Towson along to UNC Wilmington. They've been better here in conference play. Meanwhile, you've got a Hampton team that, to their credit, they've gotten to at least 77 points in each of their last 3 games. The problem is this defense is just getting absolutely gashed. They have given up 80-plus points in now 6 out of their last 7 games. This is a Hampton team that, against D1 competition, because they have played a few games against non-D1 teams, they have given up at least 70 points in every one of their games this far this season, and I do think that they're going to continue to get just lambasted on defense, but I just don't know if they're going to do their part offensively. I do think that for College of Charleston, they're going to be able to hunker down. They're going to do a nice job of guarding against a Hampton team that, as a whole, they've had Tedrick Wilcox be able to give you double figures, but have not really been that great of a three-point shooting team, and this is a College of Charleston team that I do think that they're starting to find themselves just a little bit more. So I did set my total at a 157.5, looking under, and with Charleston, one delay up to 13 points with them. 755, 756 on the betting board. Drexel, it's a road face-off against Towson. Towson is a pick 'em to a 1-point underdog. Your total is 125 to 126. Drexel all of a sudden has really gotten it going on offense. They have scored now 80-plus points in something like 4 out of their last 6 games. It's been absolutely ridiculous what we've seen out of them. But now you go up against a Towson team that's in the bottom 25 with regards to total possessions per game, and really both of these defenses are playing well. Drexel is a team that is very much at home when they're playing low and slow games, and I do think that they're going to be willing to play that style. So I did set my total at 125. I'm looking at the under. We've got a Drexel team that's currently 68th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and after a little bit of a shaky start to the season, Towson has really rounded into form as well. For the Tigers, they find themselves about 117th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 9.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. And for Towson, getting Nenda Tark into the fold has been very big as well. A 2-time transfer that is able to give you about 11 points, 4.5 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. Now, if you do have trepidation with Towson in this game, it is that they shoot 62.7% at the free throw line. That is a little bit less than terrific, but this team has been a top 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and this is a Drexel team that is good down low as well. You've got Amari Williams, who's been able to give you about 8 or so rebounds per game, but for Drexel, I do think that they're going to have a little bit of a difficult time there, even though they are a team that they themselves are 7th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. I do think that's going to come down to turnovers as well. It's a Towson team that's turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. For Drexel, they turn it over 11.5 times per game, but Towson does generate a little bit more than a turnover per game more on defense rather than Drexel. Drexel doesn't really seek out a lot of those turnovers, and for Drexel, you've been able to get quite a bit more out of Mate Okoros, who's been able to shoot in the neighborhood about 44% from 3, 7.5 points per contest. Justin Moore, 3.5 assists, right around 13 points per contest. But with Towson, having a lot of these young guys being able to rise up, having someone that's able to give you about 11 points per contest, and Christian May, who's been able to chip in there some boards, having Charles Thompson be a really good shot blocker with a block and a half per contest, I think it's going to be just enough for Towson to get it done on their home floor. And while Towson certainly has their free throw shooting woes, it is a Drexel team that they shoot about 72.9% at the free throw line, and I do think that Towson is going to provide some matchup issues for this Drexel team, especially with Towson really doing a nice job defensively. This team, ever since opening night where they gave up the 75 points to Colorado, they have now allowed 72 points or fewer in all but 2 of their games ever since then. So this is a circumstance where I think it's a low-scoring slog. Semi-total 125. Looking at the under, I made Towson the 3-point favorite. I think that these two teams are a relative pick-em on a neutral court. So looking at Towson at home on this pick-em line and the under, 757, 758 on the betting board. Ryder, it's a road face-off against St. Peter's. St. Peter's is a favorite of 7 points. Totals between 133.5 and 134, and with St. Peter's made them a 7-point favorite. So at the current numbers, it's a little bit more of wait-and-see mode. We have seen a bit of movement with regards to this game. I was seeing a 6.5 a little bit earlier, and if we are able to get back to that 6.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. And a lot of books that are from faraway places, they are offering this at more like even/minus 105 juice. So if we could get down to a 6.5 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay the number with St. Peter's. It's Peacock's team as one of the best in the country at being able to generate offensive rebounds. They are able to rebound north of 30% of their missed shots. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. Going up against a Ryder team that it's just been very strange for them thus far this season. And they're a relatively good rebound rate team as well. Mervyn James, alum, TJ Weeks, these two guys have been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, and then down low Tyreek Ingram. He's been able to provide a little bit over 8 points, 6 rebounds per game. He comes in after beginning his career over at Wake Forest to be able to provide some stability down low for a Ryder team that, despite having these 3 guys, they do rank outside the top 100 with regards to rebound rate. They're about 103rd, and for Ryder, they just don't guard the 3-point arc the same way that St. Peter's does. St. Peter's is actually 46th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for this Ryder team, they're outside the top 175 because they are 231st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this Peacock team, they are 48th in the nation with that regard. Now, for St. Peter's, you don't necessarily have those top flight scorers like you do have with this Ryder team, with Mervyn James chipping in their 19 points, shooting 41.5% from 3. And it's a Ryder team that's still struggling from 3-point range, but it's gotten better. They're now shooting 31% from distance, but they're also turning the ball over 13 times per contest, which is relatively on par with St. Peter's. Now, granted, St. Peter's plays at a lower tempo, so in terms of turnovers per possession, they are a little bit of a lesser team, but Corey Washington, Latrell Reed, north of 26 points per contest between these two guys, and Reed is a do-it-all player. Gives you a steal, 4 boards, 4.5 assists per game. Michael Hoagie, about 10 points, 6.5 rebounds. These guys have done a solid job. St. Peter's only shooting about 30% from 3-point range themselves, but this team has lost just once within the conference. They've done an absolutely tremendous job of being block teams down. They did give up these 76 points to a Fairfield team that's actually really risen up with regards to their offense, but I mean, really sans that game. This St. Peter's bunch has not allowed more than 71 points all season long. Meanwhile, this is a Ryder team that they've given up 76 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that the defense wins out in this one with St. Peter's. I'm willing to lay up to 6.5 or less with them, and I did set my total at a 133. I do think that St. Peter's, with being in the bottom 75 in terms of total possessions per game, are able to slow this game down, so I'm going to be looking at that under to go along with the Peacocks, willing to lay up to 6.5 with them. 759, 760 on the betting board. Northern Kentucky plays those to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne, a underdog of 5 points, totals between 150.5 and 153.5. I think we see a bounce back spot here from Fort Wayne. I did set them as a 2.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. This was a Fort Wayne team that, I mean, just like 3 weeks ago, we were looking at them as one of the best teams in the Rising League. They were the bee's knees, and now the offense has went straight down the toilet bowl. They have given up 75 plus points in every one of their losses and are currently riding a 5-game losing streak, so that has been very much less than terrific. Prior to this, it was a Fort Wayne team that had allowed fewer than 65 points in each of their previous 4 games, one of those games being against this Northern Kentucky team. Last time these two teams played, Fort Wayne won that game 73-60. Now, I don't think we're going to see quite 60 once again from Northern Kentucky. I think that this will go northward with facing off against a Fort Wayne team that is in the top 45 with regards to total possessions per game, but this is a Fort Wayne team that they still have guys that are able to bomb it from 3-point range. You've got Jalen Jackson, Quentin Morton Robinson, combining for about 28.5 points per contest, both shooting 43.7% from 3-point range. Rasheed Bell is one of the more versatile players that you're going to find at the mid-major level. 2 steals, 16 points, 3 boards, 4.5 assists. He's now shooting north of 30% from 3-point range. It's a Fort Wayne team as a whole. They do shoot 37% from the outside. They play fast, and yet they only turn the ball over 10 times per contest. Just a case where Fort Wayne was probably getting a little bit of shooting variance to go their way. That has certainly seen some slippage, but I mean, it's a Fort Wayne team that's still 116th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, going up against a Northern Kentucky team that just because you play slow doesn't mean you play tremendous defense, and Northern Kentucky is a case of this. Now, Northern Kentucky doesn't do the world's worst job of guarding the three-point arc. They're 131st in all of college basketball. And you do have a go-to scorer, Marquise Wark, who's able to give you about 18 points per contest. And then Sam Vincent is a do-it-all guy, 15 points, 5 boards, multiple steals per contest. He's able to throw in their 3+ assists per game as well. So I like his overall game. But for Northern Kentucky, this team is 295th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That is pretty unsightly, going up against a Fort Wayne team that is actually 110th in the country with this regard. And Fort Wayne has actually done a really good job of hitting the road all season long. A lot of their woes have actually come at home, as this is a Fort Wayne team that, if you look at them specifically in a roadside-shoot-court environment, is a top 65 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With Northern Kentucky, this is a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But going up against this Fort Wayne team that they had a tough time turning over the first time around, and they themselves committing 12.5 turnovers per game with their slow style, I do think that that's going to be a bit of a hamperance. I do think that Northern Kentucky going to look better than they did the last time around in that 73-60 slobber knocker of a loss. That said, I do think that this is a nice bounce back spot for a Fort Wayne team that prior to this 5-game stretch, they were looking pretty impressive, and I think that they find their form once again, set my line at 2.5. So going to be willing to take 3+ here with Fort Wayne, and I did set my total at a 154.5. This is a Fort Wayne team that's playing at warp speed. First time around, Northern Kentucky shot north of 23s and made just 5 of them. I do think that they're going to splash in there a few more. So looking at the over and going to be willing to take the points with Northern Kentucky. Also be alert of late game felling. 761, 762 on the betting board. SMU, it's a road face-off against North Texas. North Texas is in a pick'em game, and your total on this game is 126. I made my total 120. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. You've got yourself two teams that have been doing an absolutely tremendous job on defense. It is a SMU team that, despite the fact that their defense has actually been really amazing, this is a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's not like this team has been, by any stretch of the imagination, a slug. At the very least, not the same level of sluggishness that you've got with North Texas. Out of 362 Division I teams, this North Texas team, they are 360th with regards to total possessions per game. It is an SMU team that's more around about 208th, so relatively mid-tempo team. But for SMU, I do think that they're going to have a tough time being able to splash in shots from the outside, as you've got Zariq Phillips along Chuck Harris leading the way with about 27.5 points in the neighborhood of about 6 assists, 3 steals per contest. And Harris has been a great three-point shooter, shooting 42.5% from distance. But among your 5 guys that average north of 6 points per contest, he's the only one that shoots above 26.5% from three-point range. Now, SMU as a whole actually does shoot 34.5% from three-point ranges. Got something like a BJ Edwards. He only gives you 4.8 points per game, but 4 assists, 3 boards. I like what he's been able to bring to the table. It's an SMU team that has done an okay job of being able to generate turnovers. I wouldn't call it amazing, but this is a North Texas team that they're going to play slow, they're going to play under control, and they're just going to pound you. This North Texas team has now given up 62 points or fewer in each out of their last 7 games. As a matter of fact, this team has now given up 62 points or fewer in, I believe now, 11 out of their last 12 games, and they've given up 66 points or fewer in all but 2 of them thus far this season. This North Texas team, they just keep coming at you, and they've got a trio of top flight scorers that you do need to take note of. Aaron Scott along with Reuben Jones both give you about 12.5 points per contest. Jones throws in there 4 assists, shoots 34.5% from 3, and then Jackson Edwards, 16.5 points on 34.5% three-point shooting. And all in all, it is a North Texas team that does shoot 35.5% from the outside. So while this team does play slow, defense-oriented, they do have guys who are able to bomb it from 3, and you've got this team giving you 69-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. But now they have to go up against a test against an SMU team that's really done a supreme job of being able to guard the outside. SMU, number 1 in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and in a road/shoot-court environment, opponents are shooting 22.8% from three-point range against them. Meanwhile, it's a North Texas team that they're clocking in 28th with this regard, with opponents shooting about 27.3% from three-point range against them. I'm just not seeing where the points are coming from. Fully recognize that SMU, they did give up 70 points against Tulsa. They did score 103. I do think that was a little bit of fool's gold offense. It has been a team that really past that. They have given up 64 points or fewer in every other game this month. I think that this is going to be slowed down. I think that this is going to be drag them out grimy, and I do default a little bit more to the home team in this spot in North Texas, just with their better of shooting options. So did set North Texas as a 2-point favorite, taking them on this pick 'em line. So by total 120, so also looking under 763, 764 on the betting board. William and Mary, America's favorite tag team. It's the road face-off against Hofstra. I mean, it's unfair that William and Mary has to play 2-on-5, so we're giving them 13.5 to 14 points. Your total on this game, and between 143.5 and 145. And even though William and Mary is only 2 people, I do think that we're getting to a relatively proper number, but I think that we need to be awarding much more for 2-on-5. I did set my number at 14 with Hofstra laying it, so willing to lay up to 13.5 with the pride of Hofstra. It is a Hofstra team that they've got their own dynamic duo, and you know what? They actually have more than 2 people on their team, as you've got Tyler Thomas along Charleston Dunbar, combining for north of 40 points per contest. With Thomas, he's shooting 36.5% from 3, Dunbar about 39.5% from the outside, and then Juan Carlos. He has been a really good facilitator with about 6 assists, 11.5 points, only turned the ball for about 2.8 times per contest. Now, where Hofstra is going to lose the battle is down low. Charleston Dunbar has been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, but he's really the only guy on the roster that gives you some rebounds. Jakob Fritz is 6'8", but he hasn't done a lot down low. It's a Hofstra team that's 308th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Not like William & Mary is doing some sort of amazing job either down low, though. They're about 176th with regards to rebound rate, and William & Mary is getting crushed on defense. 360th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and dead last in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in games played away from home. Even worse than Mississippi Valley State. For William & Mary, you do have a pair of guys in Glenn Dorsey, Trey Moss, who will be able to combine for just under 27 points per contest. With Dorsey, he does shoot 38.5% from three-point range, and this is a Hofstra team that they are going to allow a few open looks from three-point range. They're about 257th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. At home, they do allow opponents to shoot 36% from the outside, but William & Mary in a road/neutral court environment allowing opponents to shoot 40.8% from three-point range. This is a William & Mary team that they really don't force any sort of turnovers whatsoever. You have been able to get about 6 boards in that neighborhood, about 12.5 points per game out of Chase Lowe, and it's just such an intriguing spot with regards to this total because you got these two teams that are not really playing a lot of defense. You got both of these teams being able to hit some threes, but William & Mary 354th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Hofstra more in that neighborhood, about 218th. So I do think that you're going to have a limited amount of possessions. I do think that Hofstra going to be able to put the clamps down a little bit more on defense, but seeing what we've got right now, mostly seeing 143.5 to 144, I'm going to take the 143.5 over it. I did set my total at 144, so 143.5 is my buy point on the over, as I do think that you're going to see a lack of defense in this one, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 13.5 with Hofstra. Set my line at 14, 765, 766 on the betting board. It is Delaware. They play us to North Carolina A&T. A&T does find themselves as an underdog of 15.5 to 14.5 points. 152 to 152.5 is your total, and with Delaware, made them 16.5 point favorites. So I'm going to be willing to lay this number for North Carolina A&T. They continue to be a bottom 25 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, to their credit, they now have Jason Murphy down low, who's been able to do a better job of being able to hit the glass for this team. He is supplying the team with 6.8 rebounds per game and is legitimately the only person on the roster that's giving you north of 4.1 rebounds per game, as it's a top-heavy North Carolina A&T team. Now, to the credit of North Carolina A&T, this team has been able to get a lot out of Landon Glasper. He's giving you 21.5 points, 2.5 assists, 1.4 steals per contest. Only shoots about 30% from three-point range, but he's a high-volume guy that's doing everything that he can. But man, this team just needs to give you a bit more on defense, especially when they're away from home. When away from home, this is an A&T team that's giving up 19.5 points more per 100 possessions rather than when they are in their friendly confines. Now, to the credit of A&T, they're only turning the ball over about 9.5 times per contest, but this is not a Delaware team that's going out there looking for turnovers, and when it comes to Delaware, you have a lot of well-roundedness with this team. Jair Davis is your main man, 18.5 points, 7.5 boards. Only shoots about 29% from three, but all in all, Delaware only turns the ball over themselves 7.5 times per contest. They shoot 34.5% from three-point range, and then Jelon Trent has been a do-it-all sort of player. 9.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, steal per contest. He gets guys like Gerald Drumgoole along Calvin Riley aboard, as they're shooting a combined about 38% from three-point range. Both of these guys give you double figures. You would like to see perhaps a little bit more out of Tyler Hauser. He's been able to shoot 45.5% from three, but is only giving you about 5.5 points per contest. A little bit of a specialty sort of player, but for North Carolina A&T, really outside of Landon Glasper, pretty much everyone else is a specialty guy aside from Cayman Shell, who's actually been solid at giving out 4.5 assists to 2.1 turnovers per game. But for North Carolina A&T, it has been a squad that has been just very much all over the place with regards to their play. Now, I will say they're coming in on a 3-game win streak that came against Northeastern, Hampton, and William & Mary, the dregs of the CAA. Now they have to step up, go up against a Delaware team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to just get their offense going in general. It is a Delaware team that's been a little bit wobbly themselves recently, but this is an A&T team that has consistently struggled all year long. And I do think that with just all these shooting options, they've got an A&T team that's currently clocking in with allowing opponents to shoot 39.2% from three-point range away from them. They're going to get cash from outside the arc. I will say for A&T, a little bit better defense recently, giving up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So I did drop this total a little bit. Set my total at 148.5. Delaware outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. So diving in on the under, both Delaware going to be one to lay up to 16 points with them. 767, 768 on the betting board. Cleveland State plays us a Wright St. Wright St looks to be the right side as a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. And your total is between 165 and 166.5. They call themselves Wright State, but I think that it is the wrong side as I set Cleveland State as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at Cleveland State right on the money line. It's a Wright State team that no question, they've got a lot of really good offensive pieces as you've got Trey Calvin, Tanner Holden combining for north of 37 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot north of 40% from three-point range. And for that matter, this is a Wright State team that as a whole, they're shooting 37.9% from three. They only turn the ball over 11 times per contest. Their rebound rate is in the top 150 nationally with having Holden along with Brandon Noel throwing their A.J. Braun between these 3 guys. You're able to get about 19.5 rebounds per game. So they've done a solid job with Noel and Brown. They've been able to combine for about 25 points. And Brandon Noel shoots 39% from three-point range. But good gosh almighty, will Wright State guard someone? They are outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 350th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They actually guard the arc better on the road rather than at home. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 41.3% from three, 36.4% in a roadside shoot record environment. And when it comes to this Cleveland State team, it's not like they've been as great defensively this year as they have been in past years, but at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 30.1% from three. They're a top 85 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and even though they might not quite have the same amount of rebounding as Wright State does down low, you do have some good versatility with having Tay Williams, Elon Tristan, and Aruna combining for about 12.5 rebounds per game, and Aruna has been able to give you 17.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. We've seen Cleveland State taper off a little bit with their three-point shooting percentage, but as collective, still at 36.7% with having a pair of guys, Jason Woolridge, coupled with Tevin Smith, both being able to shoot north of 41% from the outside. Combined, these two guys have been able to give you about 18 points per contest. Now, if you do have trepidation late in games, it's because Cleveland State does shoot 65.5% of the free throw line, but they're only turning the ball over 11 times per contest as well, and you get some really nice ancillary pieces from the likes of a Dylan Arndt, who's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 5 points out of Chase Robinson, and you just don't have that quite same amount of depth with regards to this Wright State team. And this is a Cleveland State team that has been able to do a good job of being able to generate turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this is a top 75 team in that respect, and I do think that Cleveland State is hungry to avenge their earlier season loss in that game. Wright State went 8 of 16 from 3, 33 of 55 from the floor, while Cleveland State, they won 28 of 72. Cleveland State won the turnover battle. They were able to grab more offensive rebounds than Wright State by a count of 17 to 8. Wright State was just hitting their shots that night, and I do think that we're going to see this iron out just a little bit more, and I think that Cleveland State is hungry to be able to even the score. I did set my total at 162.5. I do think the Cleveland State going to do a little bit more of a respectable job on defense to be able to keep this total under, and I think that Cleveland State gets their revenge. Looking at Cleveland State on the money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. 769, 770 on the betting board. IUPUI, old UEPUI, plays us to Youngstown State. IUPUI putting the PU in IUPUI as an underdog of 13.5 to 14 points, and your total on this game, you're going to be finding it anywhere between 145.5 and 147, and if we can get a 14 plus, as unbelievable as it is, I'm going to be looking at the points with IUPUI. IUPUI has gotten a little bit more outside Jalen Counter. Counter has really been your main man. 15 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists, shooting 35% from three-point range for a bunch that they're in the bottom 100 with regards to total possessions per game. They're outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate. They turn the ball over 14.3 times per contest. They shoot 27% from three-point range, but Quanzi Samuels has now been able to give you something down low. He's been able to supply the team with 6+ rebounds in 3 of the team's last 5 games. You've been able to have this team shoot about 75% of the free throw line and get there a little bit more frequently. And last time these two teams played, it was actually a 10-point game. IUPUI held in there. They lost that game by kind of 75 to 65, as this is a Youngstown St team that's not quite the same on offense as they were a season ago. You've got the 3-point shooting percentage starting to ascend a little bit more thanks to Ziggy Reed now shooting 46% from the outside, 14 points, right around about 2 assists per contest. And you do have DJ Turner Burns, who's able to give you about 9 rebounds per game, but outside of Mr. Burns, you don't have a single guy in this roster that does give you north of 5 rebounds per game. It is a Youngstown State team that, despite that, by the way, they're actually 83rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, but I do think think that IUPUI starting to figure out a few things. This is still a relatively sorry team. This is still a bunch that has been getting crushed on defense, giving up 79 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. But this IUPUI team has gotten a little bit more out of one of their main 3-point shooters from the season ago, Vincent Brady, who last year shot about 35.5% from 3. That's been down to about 25.5% this season. While his team sucks, they've been also getting a little bit of a lack of fortune with regards to their 3-point shooting. They're starting to get a little bit more down low. It is the Youngstown St team that has had Bryson Langdon do a solid job, dishing out 4 assists to 1.6 turnovers per game, but he's not a guy that's going to light it up from 3-point range. Do like that DJ Burns has been able to shoot about 39.5% from the outside, but with this Youngstown St team, they're not really going to take advantage of this IUPUI team and how bad they are at taking care of the ball, because they themselves are one of the worst teams with regards to turnover ratio in all of college basketball in terms of the way that they don't force turnovers. So this is a circumstance where I do think that IUPUI is actually going to be able to hold in there. We saw it the first time around. So at a 14 plus, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with IUPUI, and I did set my total at 145.5. Youngstown St not playing quite as up tempo as we saw a season ago. This is a total that right now we're seeing at a 146.5 to a 147 in a lot of spots. So going to be diving in on the under, and at 14 plus, going to be looking at the points with old IUPUI. 771, 772 on the betting board. Oakland is on the road facing off against UW Green Bay, and Green Bay does find themselves as 2.5 to 3-point underdogs. And your total on this game, it is between 140 and 141. I say UW Green Bay is a 2-point home underdog, so here at the 2.5 to 3, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Green Bay coming off of a rough loss against Northern Kentucky a few days ago, but they're going to have the best player out there on the floor. That would be Noah Reynolds, 19 points, 3.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting 36.5% from 3 for a UW Green Bay team that all of a sudden, you look at the 3-point shooting balance of this team, all 6 of their top 6 scorers are shooting at least 35.6% from 3-point range. Now, rebounding still an issue for this team. Elijah Jones is giving you 6.5 rebounds per game. He is the only guy on the roster that's giving you north of 4 boards per contest. So Trey Towson, 17.5 points, 7.5 boards. He is going to be able to control this game, but where UW Green Bay is making hay is from beyond the arc, and this is an Oakland team that time and time again, they have been awful with regards to being able to guard the 3-point line. 312th in all of college basketball with that regard, and it's not to say that UW Green Bay is some sort of stalwart with their perimeter defense, but I mean, they're 42nd in the country with this regard. That in a Horizon League where teams are looking to bomb it from 3-point range left and right. Now, for this UW Green Bay team, they're going to need to do a better job of taking care of the ball. In terms of turnovers per offensive play, this has been one of the most featured teams in all of college basketball, 335th, but they're going up against an Oakland team that they really don't force the issue themselves. It is an Oakland team that certainly has been able to have Blake Lampton come back in the fold, give you double figures, do a solid job, but Rocket Watts just doesn't seem to do anything other than disappoint. He's been giving the team about 9 points on 26% 3-point shooting this year. I mean, talk about a guy that just really flamed out towards the back half of his career after a good start at Michigan State. But I mean, for Oakland, other than Trey Townsend, it's not like this team is amazing down low. You're able to get about 5 boards, 6.5 points per contest out of Isaiah Jones. It's a UW Green Bay team that has really done a nice job of batting down the hatches and being able to hit those outside shots to be able to ascend their offense. Last time these two teams played, it was a 79-73 win for Oakland on their home floor. So while they got the outright win, they were unable to get the cover, and for UW Green Bay in that game, they went 15 of 36 from 3-point range. You saw quite a few guys be able to rise up. They had 5 different guys reach double figures, and for this Oakland team, they just really rode Trey Townsend, being able to give you a double-double for Oakland. They were able to win the turnover battle in that one, and they were able to get to the free throw line much more, 29 free throws to UW Green Bay's 11. I don't think that UW Green Bay is going to draw like a whole bunch more fouls in this one, even though they're at home. They're a team that, because they do take a lot of threes, they don't get to the free throw line a ton, but that said, I do think that Green Bay is a tough matchup for this Oakland bunch. I really like the way that they've rounded into form. And for this Oakland team, they are a team that's riding a 6-game win streak. The offense has been there for them, but we are seeing them give it up from 3-point range, despite the fact that they've given up 65 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. It doesn't put aside the fact that they have been slipping up with their defense a little bit more recently, because if you want to take a look back a little bit further, they have now given up 75 plus points in 5 out of their last 8 games. So very interesting circumstance here. I did set my total at a 144. I think that Green Bay is going to be able to knock down threes like we saw the first time around, and I think that they hold in this game. I set my line at 2, so getting 3 with UW Green Bay. I'm looking at the points to go along with the over. 773, 774 on the betting board. UTEP hits the road face-off against Louisiana Tech. LA Tech does find themselves as a 10.5-point favorite. Your total is 136.5. With Louisiana Tech, I did set them as a favorite of 9.5 points, so at the 10.5, I'm going to be taking a look at the points. This is a UTEP team that they are number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. basis. Now, it is an all or nothing UTEP defense because if they do not generate a turnover, you're probably going to be getting a pretty wide open look. As for UTEP, this is a bunch that they are still outside the top 75 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for UTEP, they can be very much had inside, and that's going to be relatively rough. This is one of the worst rebound rate teams they're going to find in all of college basketball, and they do have to go up against a Louisiana Tech team that does find themselves in the top 100 with regards to rebound rate. You've been able to have Daniel Bacho give you nearly a double-double, 13 plus points, right around 9 to 10 rebounds per game. Though I will say for UTEP, despite the fact that they do gamble for turnovers, they actually get back with regards to guarding the three-point arc much better than most teams. They're allowing opponents to shoot 30.5% from three-point range in a roadside-neutral court environment. That is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Going up against the Louisiana Tech team that I'm not going to say that they're amazing from three-point range or not terrible from three-point range. You've had Isaiah Crawford do a solid job being able to chip in there about 16 points per contest. This is a team as a whole. They do shoot 36.5% from three, so a little bit above average. Shalik Chavez, 12 points on about 41.5% three-point shooting, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that they give the ball up a little bit more than most teams, 12.2 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers for a per possession basis, just outside the top 200. Meanwhile, for UTEP, you do have Tay Hardy, who's able to take over a game, 15.5 points, 2 steals, 2.5 assists, shooting 40% from three for a UTEP team that they're still rough with their offense, but they're now shooting about 31.7% from three-point range, a little bit more respectable there. They are going to lose a battle down low, but you do have Zid Boom Boom Powell, Otis Frazier, along with Kevin Kalu, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 14 rebounds per game. Calvin Solomon has some versatility, 7 points, 3.5 boards per contest. I do think that UTEP is going to do a nice job of being able to force some turnovers on Louisiana Tech. Now, I do think that for UTEP, they're going to lose the battle down low, but this is a UTEP team that if they can get their turnovers going, this is an absolutely supreme defense. They did get gashed against Western Kentucky, giving up 87 points in that one, but if you take that out of the fold, this team has now given up 73 points or fewer in 8 of their 9 games, excluding that one, so they've actually done a really good job with this regard, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that is a top 65 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in their own right. They have given up 57 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games, so I do think that you're going to get a nice little defensive expose here. I did set Louisiana Tech as a 9.5 point favorite, so at the 10 plus going to be willing to take the points. It's up by total 133.5. I think you get a slog. I'm looking at the under and the points with UTEP. 775, 776 on the betting board. Northeastern is playing us to UNC Wilmington, and Wilmington does find themselves as a favorite of 2.5 to 3 points. Totals between 142 and 143. Did set my total at a 144. With UNC Wilmington, not quite the same team defensively as we've seen in past years. They're outside the top 170 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and 282nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That said, this is also a Wilmington team that has been able to do a really good job of protecting the ball. Top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I made them a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Northeastern team that plays very slow, very under control. They're about 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but despite that, they have had their issues of being efficient on offense. This team is turning the ball over 13 times per contest. They are shooting just 30.8% from three-point range. You do have Hunter Woods, who's been able to give you about 9.5 points, 4 boards on 35% three-point shooting. But other than Chris Jordy, you don't have much down low. You've had Joe Pridgeon give you 9 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but it's all up to Jordy to be able to control things down low. 13 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists. He tries to shoot threes, but he shoots 23.5% from the outside. And they go up against a UNC Wilmington team that is going to have the best player out there on the floor. That would be Tarzarian White, who's been able to give you just below 20 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, shooting it really well from three-point range. And this is a Northeastern team that's had all sorts of issues guarding the three-point arc themselves. 343rd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage at home, allowing opponents to shoot 37.7% from three-point range. And don't worry, it travels because they allow opponents to shoot 37.2% from 3 in a road/neutral court environment. So it doesn't matter where they're at, they're giving up the threes. As you got KJ Jenkins giving you 11 points, shooting about 40.5% from three-point range for UNC Wilmington. This team does a relatively solid job of being able to rebound by committee. Malik Harden-Hayes has been able to give you about 4.5 boards, 10 points per contest. You could use a little bit more than 3 rebounds on Shaquem Phillips, but he gives you 1.7 steals, 14 points per contest. It is a Wilmington team that plays relatively under control, and though the defense has not been what it has been in past years, it does does feel like it's starting to round into form. 70 points or fewer surrender in 4 of their last 5 games. To the credit of Northeastern, they've been playing much better defensively as well. They've given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, and if you want to data pack a little bit further, 5 out of their last 6 games. That said, I do think that with Wilmington having all the balance, having Tarzarian White who's able to take over a game down low, and Northeastern not really able to take advantage of the fact that Wilmington is not a great rebounding team, I do think that Wilmington gets the job done. Set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with the way that both of these teams have really been giving it up from 3-point range, I think that you get a bunch of made open looks. So to set my total 144, look it over, and I'm willing to lay it with UNC Wilmington. 770, 778 on the betting board. UMKC, it is the Kangaroos on the road facing off against South Dakota State. South Dakota State is an 11.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is 149 to 149.5. Set South Dakota State as an 11-point favorite, so here at 11.5, it is my buy point on UMKC. It is a UMKC team that's outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and why Allen David and Beckett Jr. has seen a big giant slash in minutes this year, I have absolutely no idea, because he was really good down low last year for UMKC, was able to pull in there like 7 rebounds per game, was a pretty dominating force. And I mean, the Marvin Menzies system is play games are really yucky, play games are really slow, and I mean, he's able to help the team do that, and yet they're just not giving him too much of an opportunity to do so. They're running everything through Jamar Brown, who's been solid. He's been able to give you 14 points, 6.5 boards, shoots in the low 30s from 3-point range, and has been able to cut down on the turnovers, 2 or fewer in now 4 of the team's last 5 games. But with Mbeka Jr., he gives you about 8 points, 4.5 boards, and 15.5 minutes per contest. So that has just been really head-scratching and strange to say the least. They've been dealing with an injury to Anderson Kopp, who was their main scorer through about 10 games. He has not been seen in about a month and a half, so that has been hurting this team. But they have been able to get a little bit more out of Julian Ramirez Montero, who's been able to shoot 43% from 3-point range. He actually comes in from the Netherlands, and he's given a boost to a team that's only shooting about 32.5% from distance. Then you go up against the South Dakota State team that's been absolutely horrible with their defense. They are outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis, and the South Dakota State team has truly given it up from 3-point range as well. South Dakota State outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but UMKC in a road/rich court environment, they're 287th overall in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That balloons well north of 37% from the outside when they are away from home, going up against the South Dakota State team that He's going to have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Zeke Mayo, 18 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists on 39% three-point shooting. And for the South Dakota State team, even though they're not tremendous on the glass, each of your top 5 scorers do give you at least 4 rebounds per game. So you've got some real consistency there. If you look at the overall rebound rate for South Dakota State, it's right around 188. So it's not impressive, but it's nothing terrible, while UMKC, surprisingly, has actually been 35th in all of college basketball. So you have to give a little bit of credit where credit is due. But when it comes to this South Dakota State team, they shoot as collective about 36% from three-point range. Charlie Easley, Luca Pell, throw in there as well, Caitlin Gary. They're all shooting between about 36.3 to 38.5% from distance. Between the three of these guys, you're getting about 30 points per game. William Kyle down low is able to give you a block, 13 points per contest, and I do think that South Dakota State is going to be able to get the job done and go bombs away from three-point range against UMKC, but I also do think that UMKC, with what I was alluding to a little bit earlier with regards to that rebound rate, they're going to be able to hold South Dakota State to those one-and-done opportunities. It's a UMKC team that they themselves have gone to at least 69 points in each out of their last 4 games, so I do think that this is going to be a little bit higher scoring affair, despite the fact that you've got 2 relatively slow teams. I did set my total 151, looking at the over, and at 11.5 or more, taking the points with UMKC, set them as an 11-point dog. 779, 780 on the betting board. UT Rio Grande Valley is going to be playing us to Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist is a 4 to 4.5 point favorite with your total 145.5. Set my line at 5.5. Going to be willing to lay with Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist is really looking to slow things down. They are outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Now, the key is you need to find some help for Dominic Daniels. He has been tremendous with 19 points on 34.5% three-point shooting for a Cal Baptist team that they only shoot about 31% from three-point range, but they're going to be able to control the glass. Ivan Odriogo along with Hunter Goodrick have been able to combine for just under 18 rebounds per game. Goodrick last year, by the way, was shooting north of 45% from three. That's down to about 22% from distance this season, but they're going up against the UT Rio Grande Valley team that's going to get absolutely pasted on the glass. 324th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, this is a Cal Baptist team that, while they are a little bit top heavy, they're still a top 50 team with regards to their rebound rate. It's a Grand Valley team that really doesn't bomb it well from three-point range either as a collective. They shoot 30% from three-point range. Now, the guy that I really like for this team is Hassan Abdul Hakim. He's been tremendous, being able to give the team 39.5% three-point shooting, 14 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, a really good stat sheet suffer. The problem that you got for UT Rio Grande Valley is that he missed the last game against Charleston St, and he's probably going to be out of the fold once again. So that's a little bit of doomsday for a team that, honestly, they've been playing a little bit more respectably. A lot of their defensive numbers have been warped by the fact that a lot of their games have went to overtime. As a matter of fact, 2 of their last 5 games have went to overtime. So, while this UT Rio Grande Valley team is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're not a good defensive team. They're not quite as bad as the raw numbers would seem to indicate, but that's it. You just don't have a lot of three-point shooting now. You've been able to get about 15 points, 3 assists out of Elijah Elliott. You've had DeAnthony Tippler out of the fold, so that has hurt this team from the outside, and they need the outside because they don't control the ball very well with about 15.5 turnovers per game. They don't hit the boards very well. It is a Cal Baptist team that you'd like to see Blondo Chiquinho chip up. He's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest, shooting less than 30% from three-point range. Brantley Stevenson shooting about 40% from distance, along with this UT Rio Grande Valley team. Just in general, not playing a lot of defense. That includes along the perimeter for UT Rio Grande Valley. They allow opponents to shoot 37.5% from three-point range away from home, 23.6% from three-point range at home. Dealing with the injuries that they are, I do think that that is certainly going to be going northward. I do think that that is a split that is going to be drying up. I did set Cal Baptist as a 5.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I do think that this is going to be a Grand Valley team that's going to be looking to push some tempo despite the fact that they're dealing with some injuries, and I can see there being some late game falling here. It did set by total 145.5, so at a 145 or less, going to be looking at the over, seeing a 145 out there to go along with Cal Baptist, laying the number. 781, 782 on the betting board. It is Quinnipiac playing us in Mount St. Mary's. The Mount is a 5-point underdog with your total 152. With Mount St. Mary's, I did set them as an underdog of 4.5 points. So here at the 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It's a Quinnipiac team that has a really good straight-up record that I do think is a little bit of fool's gold. They're right now 14-4, but there's been some hairy results out there. It is a Quinnipiac team, though, that they do a relatively solid job of being able to rebound by committee, as you've got each of your top 3 scorers giving you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. And when Rashad Varvers has been out there in the fold, he's been able to help out as well, but he's been on the fold for quite a while. But for Quinnipiac, each of your top 3 scorers as well shoot at least 37% from 3, with Amari Tice, Matt Blonich, both shooting approximately 37% from 3. Tice is a little bit of a do-it-all guy, 12.5 points, 7 boards, 2 steals, a block per contest, while Blonich is just a guy that bombs from 3 at 37%, 18.5 points, 5 boards per contest. And Savion Lewis, he's a top 5 guy in the country with regards to assists, 7.6 assists to 3 turnovers per game. But they are going up against a Mount St. Mary's team that they're becoming a little bit more efficient. It's still been bad for the turnovers. They're outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but now you've got a pair of guys in Dakota LaFew along with the Shane Montgomery who are both shooting north of 35% from 3. They're combining for about 29.5 points per contest, despite the fact that Mount St. Mary's does not have a single guy that gives you north of 4.7 rebounds per game. That'd be Joey Cordelia. They're actually a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate as well, so they've done a relatively quality job there. It's a Mount St. Mary's team that also does a solid job of being able to generate some turnovers. They're a top 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they do go up against the Quinnipiac team that they're about 60th in the country with regards to rebound rate. This is a Quinnipiac team, though, that I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with what we've seen thus far from them on defense, because they are certainly giving up the arc, and they're really giving it up at home. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot 35.9% from three-point range. Amount as a whole, they shoot 33% from the outside, but now you're getting Josh Reeves going. He's shooting 35% from 3, gives you about 7.5 points per contest throughout his career. It's been an inconsistent scorer, to say the least, but I do think that this is a Mount St. Mary's team that they could be a pest. They're taking better care of the ball right now. We have seen the defense be a little bit wobbly for them throughout the season, but 70 points of fear surrendered in 3 of their last 5 games. And this is a Quinnipiac team that, while they are currently riding a 5-game winning streak, it has been a little bit wobbly for them on defense from time to time, giving up 70-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. Offense has been a rocket ship, and you do have a Mount St. Mary's team that is now a top 125 team in terms of total possessions per game, which is why I did set my total at 152.5. I think think that this is going to be close enough for late game felling. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. And with the amount, I think that they play even up on the glass. We'll take 5+ with them. 783, 784 on the betting board. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin plays us Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a favorite of 1 to 1.5 points. Your totals between 151.5 and 152. Set Grand Canyon as a full 2-point favorite. Here at the 1.5, mostly seeing 1.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. One we want to go much further, as this is a Stephen F. Austin team that is very hard to prepare for because they do such a good job swarming with the turnovers. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball. There you want to look at turnovers forced on a per possession or a per defensive play basis. They do a tremendous job on both fronts. But with Stephen F. Austin, they also give it back. 17.5 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers per possession on offense. A bottom 30 team in all of college basketball. And it's a Stephen F. Austin team where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Day-Day Hall is the only guy giving you double figures at 10.7 points per contest. But with that said, you've got 6 different guys that give you 8.1 points per contest. You've got 9 different guys that give you at least 5.2 points per contest, including a guy by the name of Krishan Christmas. It is Christmas for Stephen F. Austin whenever they're able to win, but that's it for Stephen F. Austin. Last year they were a pretty good 3-point shooting team. This year they're relatively mediocre at 33.5% from the outside, and for Grand Canyon, last year they were really lacking on the defensive side of things, and they've been able to really beef that up this season. With Grand Canyon, they're back to being a top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're doing a relatively solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. Opponents are shooting 32.8% from 3-point range against them. And this is a Stephen F. Austin team that they always have been one of those teams that they gamble for turnovers. And if they don't come up with a turnover, they're very vulnerable on the flip side, allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from 3, 262nd in all of college basketball. And they have to go up against one of the most versatile mid-major players in all of college basketball, Ty Graham Foster. He was a top junior college transfer for the 2020-21 season. 20 points, steal and a half, block and a half, 5.5 rebounds at 34% 3-point shooting. Gabe McLaughlin is able to give you 8 boards. He's able to give you about 15 points per contest. Now, interesting with Stephen F. Austin, typically because of the style that this team has, they just get absolutely clocked on the glass. They're actually 51st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. They've done a much better job with that regard, but this is a Grand Canyon team that they themselves are going to be able to hold their own on the glass. They're 20th in the country with regards to rebound rate. With regards to this Grand Canyon team, you've been able to get about 6.5 points, 6 boards out of Duke Brennan. He's been a nice addition for this team. Sidney Curry has been a little bit all over the place. He's seen a drop in his minutes, but he's able to guard down low as well. I do think the Grand Canyon going to be able to do a good enough job of taking care of the ball. It is a little bit of a funky style that they're having to go up against, but it's not one that they haven't seen before. Stephen F. Austin has been a rocket ship with their offense, 84 plus points in 4 out of their last 5 games, but this is a Grand Canyon team as I'll give it up 65 points for fear in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that defense wins out. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2 points with Grand Canyon. When it comes to total, did set mine at a 149.5. I think that Grand Canyon cleans up the glass. I think that they take care of the ball, slow things down, looking at the under and looking at Grand Canyon. 785, 786 on the betting board. Lindenwood is on the road facing off against Little Rock. Little Rock does find themselves as a favorite of 12.5 points. Total on this game is 154. And with Little Rock, I set them as a 14-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I just need to find what Lindenwood is right now doing well, because they are well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. This is a Lindenwood team that right now got one guy on the roster that is giving north of 1.6 assists per contest. They're completely rudderless with that regard. They shoot 27.8% from 3-point range with one guy that's averaging north of 4 points that's shooting above 29.5% from 3-point range. That would be Jeremiah Tolton, who's been able to give you about 7 points per contest. It's rough, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, Keenan Cole has been able to do a solid job with Cole. He's been able to give you 18.5 points, 6 boards. He's been relatively solid. And Darius Bean, who comes in from Northern Illinois, gives you a steal, 12.5 points. 2.2 assists, which sadly leads the team. But I mean, this is a Little Rock team that they've really been able to do a better job of cutting down on the turnovers this year. They're a very up-tempo team that turns the ball over 12.3 times per contest. When you're a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, completely acceptable. And out of your top 5 scorers, 4 of them give you at least 5 rebounds per game. They don't have that one alpha dog rebounder, but you do have a pair of guys, Jameer Chaplin along KK Robinson, who have been able to combine for 13 rebounds, about 34.5 points per game. And with Chaplin, he's shooting 37% from the outside. You've been able to get some relatively good facilitation, about 3 assists, 10 points per game as well out of Bradley Douglas as a little bit of an ancillary guard. And this is a Lindenwood team that their offense has just really fallen on some tough times. The only team that they've exceeded 70 points against this month is Southeast Missouri State, and that is a Southeast Missouri State that is all sorts of brutal right now. And for this Lindenwood team, if you look at them overall for the season, they have exceeded the 72-point plateau twice against Division I competition. Now, this is a Little Rock team that has certainly given it up. They are well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Much of that is because this is a team that sometimes goes a little bit too fast for their own good, 37th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but even with the defensive woes of Little Rock, 280th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, I just have zero faith whatsoever that Lindenwood is going to be able to exploit that. And then on the flip side, Lindenwood, 271st in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. There is one positive. They're actually giving up 3.5 points less per 100 possessions in a road/neutral environment rather than at home. But I just flat out don't think that Lindenwood is going to be able to do their part with regards to this total. It is a Little Rock team that's certainly been getting gashed on defense, 75 plus points surrendered in each of their last 5 games. But with Lindenwood's just ineptitude with regards to offense, I do think that Lindenwood is going to get completely controlled in this game. I think they lose the battle on the glass. I think that they turn the ball over a lot, and I do think that Little Rock going to be able to exploit that. Set my line at 14. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 152. So diving in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Little Rock. 787, 788 on the betting board. Western Kentucky plays us at Florida International. Florida International finds themselves as 6.5 point underdogs, and your total on this game is 157 after 158. And with Florida International, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take these points. It is a Florida International team that's one of the best in all of college basketball, being able to force turnovers. A top 10 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. The issue that you got with Florida International is that this is one of the worst rebound rate teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Ontario Dean is having to do everything for the team. 12.5 points, 3.9 steals per game, leads all of college basketball. 4.5 assists, is 4.8 rebounds per game. It's the only mark on the team that's higher than 3.6. Nobody else on the team gives you north of 3.6 rebounds per game. That is rough. And this is an FIU team that they themselves are in the bottom 50 in all of college basketball in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, with 14.5 per contest. So Javante Hawkins has been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest. But you do go up against the Western Kentucky team that they themselves have been a little bit wobbly recently with regards to their defense. Overall for the season, it's a top 100 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And much of that has been because this Western Kentucky team has been supreme at being able to guard the three-point arc. For Western Kentucky, they rank 29th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They don't necessarily shoot it well from three-point range themselves. Don McHenry has been a solid go-to scorer for the team. He's been able to log for the team in the neighborhood about 14.5 points, 2.5 assists, while shooting 36% from three-point range, but this team also turns the ball over 14 times per contest. Now, they do generate about 8 steals per game, and you do have a few guys down low that are able to give you some rebounds. Baba Carfei, along with Brandon Newman, have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per contest, and FIU, without question, they're losing the battle on the glass. They're 346th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. Western Kentucky is about 108th, so they've got the leg up there, but it's not like they're necessarily supreme with regards to rebounding. It's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of approach with them. And I do think that for FIU, they've really been able to find themselves recently as well. This has been a squad that has been able to hunker down on defense with 70 points of fear surrender in 3 out of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, it's a Western Kentucky team that they've been looking to go a little bit faster, scoring at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games. But I do think that FIU going to be able to force Western Kentucky into some turnovers, which will keep them lively in this game, and one that I think is going to be very up and down. Both of these teams do rank in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. Set my total at a 159. I'm looking over, and I'm looking at FIU with the points. Set them as a 5-point dog. 789, 790 on the betting board. UW Milwaukee plays us in Detroit, and Detroit is a underdog of 12.5 to 13 points. Their total on this game is 155.5 to 156. Now, do note that if there is a sign of an apocalypse coming, it is when Detroit wins a college basketball game, and I don't think that it's going to be coming on Thursday. I set my line at 15. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with UW Milwaukee. And this is a Detroit team that's a little bit better now that they've got Jaden Stone, their top scorer, in the fold. So I've had to adjust to them just a little bit, as Mr. Stone, well, he has been stone cold for this team, not necessarily Stephen F. Austin, but 19.5 points, 6 boards, shooting 33% from 3. And you got a team that turns the ball over 14 times per contest, being outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, shooting 39.5% from the floor and 26% from 3. That's actually halfway decent. You've got Edward Del Cadilla, who's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but and you just take a look at Detroit and their metrics page, it's just a whole bunch of dark red. It's really, really sad, to say the least. Detroit, 344th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. They're well outside the top 3 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's a Detroit team that is currently clocking in 355th. As a matter of fact, I mean, it just travels. They're giving up the same amount of points per possession on the road as they do at home. They've got no home court advantage whatsoever at this this point, and it's a Detroit team that, with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 359th. I mean, good grief. Now, this is a UW Milwaukee team that's outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis themselves, and they're 348th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. So, man, we get just absolutely smoked there. That said, with UW Milwaukee, you now got your top scorer back in the fold in BJ Freeman. He was very much missed by this team, and he's been able to give you about 18 points. They've actually brought him in off the bench quite a bit ever since he has returned, shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. He's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but you've got relatively good by committee rebounding for this team. You've got 1 or 2 guys hurt, but out of your top 7 scorers, every single one of them do give you at least 3.2 rebounds per game, so a little bit of credit where credit is due, but this is a UW Milwaukee team that they certainly give it up on the inside, they give it up from the outside. You've been able to have Eric Pratt along with Kentrell Pullian be able to combine for about 24.5 points per contest. Pullian has been able to give you a steal per contest, and Pratt shooting about 40% from three-point range. This is a Detroit team that last time they faced off against UW Milwaukee got to 61 points. That game, Jaden Stone was out of the fold, so we're going to be a little bit fair there, but man, this is a Detroit team that's just an absolute wreck right now. They're 0-20. I mean, they have now given up at least 81 points in each of their last 4 games. Credit where credit is due. They played 2 games to within single digits out of their last 3, and this is a UW Milwaukee team that has given up 80-plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, the only exception being, you guessed it, the old Detroit Titans. But that said, I think that UW Milwaukee pounds Detroit once again. I did set my total 153. I think UW Milwaukee is certainly going to be scoring big in this one. I just don't know if Detroit is going to be doing their part, as this has been a team that has scored 64 or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. So looking at the under, and with the UW Milwaukee, willing to lay up to 14.5 with them. 791, 782 on the betting board. It is Oral Roberts playing host to Omaha. Omaha does find themselves as an underdog of 4 points. Your total is 155 to 155.5 with Omaha. I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points. So here at the 4, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is an Oral Roberts team that certainly is playing much slower than they have in past years. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and not like this Oral Roberts team is playing any sort of defense right now. They are 328th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Nebraska Omaha is playing quite slowly, and they're 281st in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And I will say this for Omaha, giving up 5.4 points fewer per 100 possessions at a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. That's a little bit crazy, and for Omaha, you do have Frankie Fiddler, who's become a really nice go-to scorer. 18.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals on 38% three-point shooting. For an Omaha team that they take care of the ball. They only turn the ball over about 10.3 times per contest, but you just need a little bit more down low. Markel Sutton has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but this is an Omaha team that's just getting completely lambasted on the glass. Really, both of these teams are. For Nebraska Omaha, they're about 248th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Oral Roberts is 353rd, but the big thing for this Nebraska Omaha team is that they need to guard the arc in a situation like this, and for Nebraska Omaha, when they're at home, they allow opponents to shoot 38% from 3. This actually falls to about 31.5% in a roadside neutral court environment. Overall, they're about 182nd, but I do think that we're going to see a little bit of reversal with regards to some of those trends. You really don't have that main ball handler for Omaha as well. J.J. White has been able to give you about 2.5 assists, 8.5 points per contest, but for Roberts, just everyone out there on the floor is able to go bombs away from three-point range, including their top scorer in Isaac McBride, 20.5 points, 3 assists on 38.5% three-point shooting. For this Oral Roberts team, out of your top 7 scorers, you've got 6 of them shooting at least 37.5% from three-point range, and the lone exception is Jashung Weaver, who's been in and out of the full deal with injuries, but you've now got Kareem Thompson along with Jalen Bedford. They've been able to combine for about 28 points per contest. They both give you 6.5 plus rebounds per game. They're both shooting north of 40% from three-point range, and Oral Roberts, top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. This team has gone to at least 76 points in 4 of their last 5 games now. They have certainly surrendered their fair share of points, giving up north of 80 in 3 of their last 5 games, but for Nebraska Omaha, I still have my question marks with regards to this offense. I do think that this is going to be a game that's very much slowed down. Both of these teams are playing at a ridiculously slow pace. They're just not very efficient in general with regards to their defense, but I do think that the slow pace causes an under, especially with Omaha guarding the three-point arc a little bit better on the road. Set by total 146.5, looking under, but with Oral Roberts, I do think that they take it to them once again. Going to be willing to lay up to 6 with old Oral Roberts. 793, 794 on the betting board. St. Thomas plays host to North Dakota State. The Bison of North Dakota State are an underdog of 7 points with your total 141 with North Dakota State. I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a St. Thomas team that's really been able to rise up with regards to their defense. For St. Thomas, ever since they've come to the D1 ranks, they've always been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. But until this year, they were not a good defensive team. This year, they rank 105th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and North Dakota State does not rank 105th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they rank 352nd. They go up against the St. Thomas team that doesn't do a great job on the glass, as you don't have a single guy on the team that gives you north of 4.7 rebounds per game, as you've got a trio in Kentrell Blue, Parker Jorkland, Ramir Anthony that have all been able to give you about 4.1 to 4.7 rebounds per game. But you've got Anthony doling out 3 assists on 43% three-point shooting. Jorkland at right around 6'6" is able to shoot 33% from the outside with about 13.5 points per game. And the St. Thomas team has really been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the three-point arc as well, because this is a bunch that they're going to probably lose the battle down low. But for St. Thomas at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.9% from three-point range. Again, North Dakota State not doing that. 361st out of 362 D1 teams in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Brooks Allen has also been able to give you about 2 assists. He's got some versatility. He shoots 35% from three-point range, shipping in there about 6.5 points per contest for St. Thomas. And for North Dakota State, Andrew Morgan has some nice versatility at about 6'10" with about 12 points, 5 boards, shoots some threes, but you just need to see him hit the glass a little bit more. Bowden Skunberg is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game with about 15 points per contest. It is a North Dakota State team that only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They've got more facilitation with Damari Wheeler-Thomas giving you about 3 assists per game, but with this North Dakota State team, their unwillingness to be able to get dirty, to be able to get rebounds, as in terms of rebound rate, this team is clocking in 259th. That will not allow them to be able to unearth the Achilles heel of St. Thomas really not having a lot of size. As a result, I do think that St. Thomas is going to be able to take control of this game, be able to get it done, and this is a St. Thomas team that has been one of the more efficient offenses in all of college basketball. Despite not being a flamethrower with regards to their three-point shooting, they're about 110th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. So it is a spot where I set St. Thomas as an 8-point favorite, one to lay it in. It's on my total 144 with the way that North Dakota State is at guarding his soul. So one to lay the number and going to be looking at the over. 795, 796 on the betting board. Southern Utah is hitting the road. They're facing off against Tarleton State. Tarleton State does find themselves as a favorite of 6.5 points. Total on this game is 149. It's on my total 144.5. Tarleton State is just sticking in the mud right now. They're outside a top 320 with regards to total possessions per game, going up against a Southern Utah team that's hardly shooting 30% from three-point range. So, going to be taking a look at the under in this spot. Now, to the credit of Southern Utah, in a road/neutral environment, they're allowing opponents to shoot 31.4% from three-point range. Rob Jeter, I don't think is doing a bad job with this program. He's not quite what Todd Simon was, but very few coaches are Todd Simon. But this is a Southern Utah team that has a few moments of brightness. But for Southern Utah, I do think the fact that they're not going to be able to take advantage of Tarleton State being a little bit soft on the glass is really going to be costly for them. This is a Southern Utah team that's 291st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. And when you do have a Tarleton State team that does generate a lot of turnovers like they do, they're a top 35 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Typically, that leads to them being a much more vulnerable team down low. And Tarleton State, they're about 250th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got Kadai Gaddy, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 12 points per contest. And I will say, out of your top 5 scorers, you do have 4 guys that give you at least 4.3 rebounds per game. That includes Ja'Cory Smith, your main guy, giving you about 14 points, steal and a half per contest, shooting about 32.5% from 3 for a core of Tarleton State that shoot about 29.5% for distance, but they don't attempt a lot of 3, so that does help mitigate that a little bit. But for Tarleton State, they do a really good job just with their defensive approach. They do a nice job of being able to slow things down in general, and I will say the offense has been able to emerge as well, north of 75 points in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Southern Utah team that I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up their end of the bargain with regards to the offense, just with the way that the three-point shooting has been very inconsistent. Dominique Ford has been able to give you 16.5 points per contest, and for Southern Utah, they don't do the world's worst job of being able to take care of the ball. 11.5 turnovers per game, but in order to take down this Tarleton State team, in my opinion, you do need to knock down your threes. This is a Tarleton State defense that, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 297th in all of college basketball. Them shooting 30% from 3, them having Zion Young be a little bit wishy-washy, 13 points, about 4 boards per contest, shooting from 3-point range just 33%. I just don't think they're going to be able to do so. So it is a circumstance where I did set Tarleton State as a favorite of 8.5 points. So seeing what we've got right now, I'm going to be taking a look at the under as I set my total 144.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the 6.5 with Tarleton State. 790 785, 786 on the betting board. Abilene Christian plays us to Utah Tech. Utah Tech, a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog with your total 147 to 147.5 with Utah Tech. Set them as an 8.5-point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Abilene Christian, a top 30 team in all of college basketball. There goes the turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and for Abilene Christian, it's one of those teams where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You've got Ali Abdu-Diba, who's been your main scorer, being able to supply about 15.5 points per contest, but this is a team that, with regards to the rotation, when everyone's healthy, they've got about 9 guys giving you at least 11.5 minutes per contest. You've only got 2 guys that give you north of 3.7 rebounds per game. That'd be Diba, along with Arion Simmons. But everyone does a good job with their collective of being able to generate steals. Have your top 7 scorers, 6 of them give you at least a steal per contest. As a collective, they shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range. Now, Abilene Christian, they're a team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate. And Abilene Christian, typically with a defense like this, they give up a lot of open looks from 3. That hasn't been the case as much this year, though. They're about 134th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they go up against a Utah Tech team that the lifeblood of this team is being able to make those threes. Nolan Gonsalves has been your main scorer with about 12 points of steal, shooting 40% from 3-point range, and it is a Utah Tech team that, as a collective, they do shoot 35% from 3, but that's way down from where they were a season ago. They turn the ball over 16 times per contest. In terms of turnovers per possession, they are a bottom 40 team in the country with this regard. It just feels like a doomsday matchup. Plus, this is an Abilene Christian team that is quite soft down low. You got Tanner Christensen giving you about 7 boards, 11.5 points per game. So Utah Tech is not going to be able to unearth that Achilles heel as well. It's a Utah Tech team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they're clocking in 281st. This is an Abilene Christian team that can be had if you got the right style. This is just not the right style with Utah Tech, with the way that they are all over the place during the ball over. They've not been able to get a lot of production ever since David Elliott has returned to the fold. He missed a lot of time, and ever since he has returned, 6 points or fewer in 3 out of the team's last 4 games. He's turned the ball over quite a bit recently because he had an outburst of 11 points in the team's last game against Stephen F. Towson. It came with 6 turnovers as well. So it is a spot where I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Abilene Christian. And with my total, I did set it at a 154.5. I think that Utah Tech is going to allow Abilene Christian to turn defense into offense, and Utah Tech, they themselves give up a whole bunch of open looks with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Utah Tech in a road/shoot corner environment, allowing opponents to shoot 35.8% from 3-point range. So a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Abilene Christian. 799, 800 on the betting board. South Alabama hits the road face-off against Louisiana Monroe, and Monroe does find themselves as an underdog of 3.5 to 4 points at home, and your total on this game is between 142.5 and 143.5 with Louisiana Monroe. I did set them as an underdog of 6 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay with South Alabama. This is not the South Alabama of old. There's no question about it. They are outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis. It is a South Alabama team that's really not stroking it well from 3-point range either. For South Alabama, it's been Isaiah Gator having to try to do a little bit of everything for the team. 4 boards, 17 points, a little bit over a steal per contest, and he does shoot 39.5% from 3 for a team that, as a collective, they shoot 32% from the outside. South Alabama outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. This Louisiana Monroe team is not doing a whole heck of a lot tremendous themselves, so this Louisiana Monroe team outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are certainly giving up the arc, but they are actually a relatively good rebound rate team. They're a team that ranks about 80th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. One of those holes greater than some of its parts approaches, but they also really do give it up from 3-point range as well. As for Louisiana Monroe, opponents are shooting from 3-point range on them and around about 35.5%. That is 269th in all of college basketball. It actually gets worse when they are at home. And for Louisiana Monroe, you don't have a single guy in the roster. It gives you north of 11 points per contest. You've got Nika, and I cannot pronounce the last name, along Tyreek LaCour, who both give you between about 10 to 10.5 points per contest, or combining about 5 assists per game. But for Louisiana Monroe, they're shooting 65.5% the free throw line, 27% from 3-point range with 13 turnovers per contest, and really have a team that has been okay on the glass. Nika, along with Jalen Bolden, have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game. You've been able to have A.D. Diadu, who comes over from UAB, be able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. Gives you no scoring whatsoever, but he's a relatively nice 6'11" post presence for the team. But for South Alabama, I do think that Thomas Howell is going to start to give you a little bit more of something moving forward. He's actually a Louisiana Monroe transfer that has been able to give the team 7 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. He's been able to give the team 4 blocks in the last 2 contests as well, so he's been able to help out a South Alabama team that has been, once again, relatively shoddy with with regards to their defense, but they've been looking a little bit better with their offense recently, as now they've gotten to at least 74 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Louisiana Monroe team that they were able to really break out against Old Dominion a few days ago. This is an Old Dominion team that's just absolutely sad and pathetic, though. I think that was more speaking to how bad they are right now, as Louisiana Monroe had scored 70 points or fewer in each of their previous 7 games. And for Louisiana Monroe, if you look at them for the entirety of the season against Division I competition, they have broken the 74-point plateau just once thus far this season. So I do think that you're going to get a little bit of a lower scoring slog. I do think that this is going to be something that slowed down. And despite the fact that Monroe is relatively solid on the glass, the South Alabama team, they do a better job of taking care of the ball. They just run better sets in general. And I do think that this is going to be a slowed down game that goes the way of South Alabama. I set my number at 6. I'm going to be willing to lay the number and did set my total 142. So diving in on the under and going to be looking to lay the points with South Alabama. 801, 802 on the betting board. Louisiana is playing us Arkansas State, and Arkansas State is an underdog of 3.5 points. Drawn's game is 155.5. With Arkansas State, I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points. So here at the 3.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's an Arkansas State team that really does leave themselves vulnerable defensively. Offensively, they've been able to have DeAndre Dominguez do a really nice job at 6'9" of supplying the team with 13.5 points, 8.5 boards. Shoots it at about a 34% clip from 3-point range. And for Arkansas State, playing at the tempo that they do, a top 125 mark in terms of total possessions per game, them turning the ball over only about 12.2 times per contest is actually relatively decent. But that said, this is an Arkansas State team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 299th in all of college basketball. Very strangely, they're actually allowing about 7.5 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/shoot record environment rather than when they are at home. And they're going up against a Louisiana team that sometimes they do get a little bit loose with the ball and turn it over, but these are guys that are really able to just pump it in there from 3-point range. And Louisiana is actually one of the weirdest splits I've ever seen. They're actually averaging 12 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot record environment. I have to think that this irons out. Kobe Julian, 18 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 39.5% from 3. It's a Louisiana team as a whole. They're shooting 37.5% from 3. They generate 9 steals per game. Now, this team is getting just cooked on the glass. You've got Joe Charles, who gives you 9.5 rebounds per game, only guy on the roster, giving you north of 5.2 rebounds per game. As a result, Louisiana well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate, but each of your top 5 scores, they give you at least a steal per contest. You've got Kentrell Garnett shooting 43% from 3-point range. And this is an Arkansas State team that has had a really tough time of guarding the arc all season long. For Arkansas State, they're currently clocking in right in the neighborhood about 135th with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from 3-point range at home, 30% in a road/shoot record environment. Both of these teams have very weird home and road splits I do think are going to iron out in this game. I do think that you get some clear outliers. I think that you're looking at a pair of them here. I also don't think that Louisiana is going to continue to allow opponents to shoot 19.7% from 3-point range at home. That's just absolutely ridiculous. They're a good 3-point shooting defense. There's no question about it, but it's a little bit too far. You got an Arkansas State team that also has the likes of Avery Felts along with Caleb Fields, who returned from the season ago. Fields has been able to give you about 5 assists per contest, chipping in there 12.5 points per contest. Felts is about 8 points per game, shooting about 44% from 3-point range. I do think that you're going to be seeing quite a bit more offense than what we've seen in Louisiana games at home thus far this season, as Louisiana has been really good with their defense at home and terrible with their offense. Meanwhile, when they hit the road, it's been the exact opposite. So something's got to give here, and you've got an Arkansas State team that they themselves have gotten to at least 77 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've given up at least 75 points in 3 of their last 5. So a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Louisiana. I think that they rise up at home and did set my total at 156.5. I think that this game could be close enough for late game following. So looking at the over and going to be looking to lay it with Louisiana. 803, 804 on the betting board. Tennessee Tech is road face-off against Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois does find themselves as a 4-point favorite, and your total on this game is 133 with Eastern Illinois. Set them as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Eastern Illinois. The team has been able to do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers. A top 75 team with regards to turnovers force on a per possession basis, with having Tiger Booker really being the main guy. He is booking it with 14 points, 3 assists, right around 2.3 steals per contest for a core that they only turn the ball over 10.5 times per contest. They shoot 34.5% from 3-point range. What has really been killing Eastern Illinois is, for one, the glass. They really don't have a lot down low. You do have one guy in Cooper Jacoby, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points, 7.7 rebounds per game. But in terms of rebound rate, this is an Eastern Illinois team that's not having a lot of success there. 235th in all of college basketball. But it's not like this Tennessee Tech team is doing a whole heck of a lot on the glass as well. 340th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You've been able to get about 6.3 rebounds per game of Daniel Igabonui. Hopefully I said that correctly, but for Tennessee Tech, this is a team that has a core. They're shooting about 32% from three-point range. They don't turn the ball over a ton at about 11.7 turnovers per game. It's just a lot of inefficiency. They're playing relatively slow. RJ Johnson has been able to give you about 11 points per contest. He's been a bit in and out of the fold. He's missed 3 games, so that's been a little bit of an issue for them. You've got about 5 boards, 16 points out of Javis Harvey, who's been able to launch at about 33% from 3 with about 3.5 assists per contest. But with Eastern Illinois being able to get some ancillary pieces to be able to step up, getting about 11 points out of Nikhil Shelton, being able to have about 8.5 points per game out of Kendall Davis. That's been big as well. Davis comes over from LIU. He's been able to shoot about 36% from three-point range. And for Eastern Illinois, it's a very well-rounded bunch as you've got each of your top 6 scorers shooting at least 32.5% from 3. Nobody above 38.6% from 3, which is Dan Lewers. But I do think that for Eastern Illinois, they're going to be able to do just enough to guard the arc, which has been a kryptonite of theirs. 349th in all of college basketball, but this is a Tennessee Tech team that they really don't knock it down themselves. And for Tennessee Tech, 280th in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage as well. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I do think that this is going to be a slowdown game. Both of these teams fall outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, but both of these teams have real issues on the perimeter guarding. So I do think that there's going to be open looks for both. Semi-total 137. Plus, I do think that you get some late game fouling here. So looking at the over with Eastern Illinois, it's not the best 5-point favorite, so I'm going to be one to lay the number. 805, 806 on the betting board. It is UT Martin playing against to Southeast Missouri State. SEMO finds themselves as an 11.5 point underdog with your total 156 after 158. And with Southeast Missouri State, I did set them as an underdog of 14 points. I'm going to be one to lay it. This is a UT Martin team that is playing at warp speed as they're a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. And for UT Martin, this team has been very strange with the way that they have been playing defense. They're allowing opponents to shoot 41.5% from three-point range at home, down to about 31.6% in a roadside neutral court environment. Overall for the season, Tennessee Martin is about 284th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, only allowing about 2.3 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. Good news for them is that this Southeast Missouri State team is just completely allergic to offense, and they themselves 283rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Old SEMO, they are 272nd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That balloons up to 38.8% in a roadside stretch court environment. For Southeast Missouri State as well, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's giving you north of 4 rebounds per game. They are one of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Rob Martin is your lone double-figure scorer. He's been able to give you about 11.8 points per contest, 3.5 assists, shooting 39.5% from three-point. But as a whole, the SEMO team shooting 67.5% the free throw line, just 30.5% from three-point range. Meanwhile, you've got a UT Martin team that they're going to be able to clean up the glass, as you've got a pair of guys, Jacob Cruz and Issa Muhammad, who have been able both to give you 8.1 rebounds per game. Jordan Sears, 19.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shooting 44.5% from three-point range for a UT Martin team that as a whole, they are shooting about 36% from three-point range. KK Curry has been a little bit down this year with his production, shooting about 32% from 3, 4.5 boards, 10 points per contest, but you've got plenty of production here. Meanwhile, for Southeast Missouri State, with them losing a lot of their top guys that were able to help lead the team to the NCAA tournament a season ago, it has led to this team just giving you absolutely nothing on offense. If you look at games against Division I opponents only, because they have played some non-D1 teams, it's a Southeast Missouri State team that has been held to 68 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a UT Martin team that certainly the defense has been not great to say the least, but it's been a little bit better recently. They have now given up 73 points or fewer, which it doesn't sound like much, but in their case it is. In 3 out of their last 5 games, and it's a UT Martin team that they're getting to 75 plus on the regular. So I do think the UT Martin going to be able to get it done in very convincing fashion. I did set them as a 14-point favorite, going to be one to lay the number, and did set my total at a 156. I just don't think that SEMO does their part with this total. Looking at the under and one to lay with UT Martin, 807, 808 on the betting board. New Mexico State, it's the road they're facing off against Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State finds themselves as a favorite of 4 points with your total 142, and I did say New Mexico State as an underdog of 6 points. I'm going to be one to lay the number with New Mexico State. They've got a lot of nice pieces, including Femi Odekale. Odekale has been a double-figure scorer, chipping in their 5 boards, but it just still feels like the chemistry is out here for a New Mexico State team that had a complete overhaul after the hazing scandal last season. They had to bring in an entirely new roster. Odekale, along with Robert Carpenter, the only 2 guys on the roster that are giving you double figures. They've been able to combine for about 10 rebounds per game, and they're both shooting about 35.5% from from 3-point range, but 13.3 turnovers per game for a team that doesn't necessarily play super up-tempo, and this is a big-time revenge game, as Sam Houston State last year, they were under the tutelage of Jason Newton. Jason Newton, he left Sam Houston State for this New Mexico State job. Trust me, Sam Houston State wants to pace it to them, so that's something to keep note of. You've got Lamar Wilkerson, Davon Barnes for this Sam Houston State team, combining for about 29 points per contest. They're combining to shoot about 35% from 3-point range. It is the Sam Houston State team that has turned the ball over about 13 times per contest, but I do think that Sam Houston State going to be able to do a relatively okay job on the glass with Sam Houston State in terms of their rebound rate. They're clocking in right around about 195th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, New Mexico State, they're about 233rd with this regard. It's a Sam Houston State team which a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You've got a trio of guys in DeMar Nichols Jr., along with Keon Scroggins, along with Soleimani Diambaye, who have been able to combine for about 16 rebounds per game, and then Jaden Wright. 4 assists, only about 6.5 points per contest, but run some efficient sets for a Sam Houston State team that goes up against a New Mexico State bunch that they've been able to win 4 of their last 5 games. They've been looking better defensively, giving up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, but this is a Sam Houston State team that they've really been able to hit the gas with regards to their offense as well. This has been a squad that has been able to reach the 70-plus point plateau in 3 of their last 5 games. I do think that Sam Houston State going to be able to find some open looks against a New Mexico State team that has not done a great job of being able to guard the 3-point arc for New Mexico State. They're currently, in terms of 3-point shooting percentage defense, 268th in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot 39.2% from 3-point range away from home. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number here with Sam Houston State. Made them a 6-point favorite. I made my total a 142 as well. I'm seeing a 141.5 out there. Willing to take that over, and I'm going to be looking to lay it with Sam Houston State. Now you get my DK Network write-up pick. This is 809, 810 on the betting board. Gonzaga plays us to San Francisco. The Dons are an underdog of 10 points. Total on this game between 151 and 151.5. My write-up is going to be on San Francisco. I set them as a 5.5 point underdog. This is a San Francisco team that has been supreme with regards to their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, you're staring at a top 15 team in all of college basketball, and they have really been able to do it down low. This San Francisco team, with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, they are 10th in all of college basketball. That ascends to 8th in a roadside shoot to court environment. Overall, they are 25th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and they allow an offensive rebound on just 21.3% of opponents' misses. That, in all of college basketball, is currently clocking in number 17. They're going up against a Gonzaga team that they're still relatively solid on the interior, 15th in the country with regards to 2-point shooting percentage, but this could be the first time in 8 years where they don't rank in the top 8 with that category. It is a Gonzaga team that it just feels like they haven't gotten what they were bargaining for out of Ryan Nembhard. Ryan Nembhard has been turning the ball over about 2.5 times per contest. Last few games, he has looked much better. I think that he got a stern talking to after the team suffered that loss against Santa Clara, but it's a Gonzaga team that they don't have that go-to guy. Now, they do have 5 separate guys that do give you at least 11.4 points per contest. Anton Watson, Graham Ike, they're both able to give you about 14.5 points, 7.5 boards per game. And Watson is shooting 45% from 3-point range, but it is a Gonzaga team that they're outside the top 200 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at 32.7%. 11.2 turnovers per game isn't bad, but now you have to go up against a Dons team that they, in terms of turnovers force on a per-possession basis, are in the top 25 in all of college basketball. And Jonathan Mogbo is a double-double machine. 15.5 points, 10.5 rebounds. Interestingly enough, he's the only guy for San Francisco that gives you north of 3.3 rebounds per game, but everyone just does their part, and you've got a team that really doles out the ball well, as you've got Mogbo along with Mongolian Mike and Marcus Williams combining for about 10 assists per contest. Every single one of these guys give you at least 3 per contest. You've got a San Francisco team that is collective. They're shooting 35% from 3-point range. You've been able to get some really good production as well, with about 11.5 points per contest out of Malik Thomas as well, a guy that was a little bit of an afterthought coming in from USC, and he's done a really good job of cranking it up recently. 12 plus points in each of the team's last 5 games. It is a Gonzaga team that has been better with their defense. They're a top 60 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and take a look at them recently. They have given up 63 points for fear in 3 of their last 5 games. Offense is starting to get into form with at least 76 points in each of their last 5 games, but this is a San Francisco team that time and time again, they're just pounding teams. They lose that game to St. Mary's at home. I think that was a big time wake-up call for them. Golden opportunity. I think think that the defense wins out in this spot. So my write-up, that is going to be on the Dons. I'm going to be willing to take the points, set this line at 5.5, and I did make my total 145.5. I think that San Francisco holds up defensively against a Gonzaga team that they're just not the same team offensively as they have been in past years. So my write-up is going to be take it 10 here with San Francisco, and I'm looking at the under 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. I know they play us in Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona does find themselves as a 3-point underdog with your total between 140 and 141 with Northern Arizona. Set them as a 3.5-point underdog. So here at the 2.5 to 3, I'm going to be willing to lay with Idaho. Idaho does have a pretty good home court advantage out there in Moscow. Now, it is a Northern Arizona team that they are going to have to deal with a lot of travel for one, and two, this team has just been a wreck offensively, defensively. If you had special teams in college basketball, they'd be a wreck on that area, as well as Northern Arizona, 273rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 19.5 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-to current environment rather than at home. And for Idaho, while they're 297th at all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are giving up 16 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. You've been able to get some good production out of Quinn Dinker. He had that game-winning shot about a month or so ago that made ESPN. He, along with Julian Mims, have been able to give you about 24 points per contest. Mims is able to give you 7.5 boards, shooting 40% from three-point range for an Idaho team that actually do a solid job of taking care of the ball, about 10.8 turnovers per game. Meanwhile, for Northern Arizona, they were really banking on Carson Tout being that guy down low. He was the team's leader in rebounds and assists a season ago. He has yet to play, so Carson Basham is right now the only guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is an Idaho team that, no doubt about it, they are not good on the glass, but for Northern Arizona, in terms of their rebound rate, 338th in all of college basketball. Oakland Ford has been able to give you 9.5 points, shoots in the low 30s from three-point range, but this is a Northern Arizona team that they turn the ball over 13 times per contest. They shoot 66.5% the free throw line. They shoot 30.6% from three. Trent McLaughlin, your lone double-figure scorer, gives you about 15.5 points per game. He's needing to do it all right now, and now they have to step into a really tough travel spot. Credit where credit is due for Northern Arizona. The offense has been a little bit better recently with 70-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, but they've also scored 50 points or fewer in 2 of those games as well. It is an Idaho defense that is certainly getting cooked as well. They have given up at least 75 points in all but one of their games ever since Christmas, so that's been a little bit less than terrific. But that said, when it comes to this Idaho team, I do think that they're going to be able to hold up against a Northern Arizona team that's been a shell of themselves when they've been away from Flagstaff. I did set my number at a 3.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is an Idaho team that's well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, but with the inefficiencies of both of these defenses and with Northern Arizona giving it up on the interior, 335th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That goes to 59.6% in a roadside shoot environment. I do think that you get enough scoring for an over. So, want to lay it with Idaho. Sits on my total 143.5. So, looking over to go along with the Vandals, hoping to not vandalize bankrolls. 8-13, 8-14 on the betting board. Northern Colorado hits the road to face off against Eastern Washington. In Eastern Washington, a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. Your total is between 162 and 163.5. I did set my total at a 168.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Both of these teams are playing the Olay style of defense right now, as Eastern Washington has been just getting completely decimated from three-point range. Eastern Washington 302nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But wait, you've got Northern Colorado's 352nd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And guess what both of these teams do? Yeah, they bomb it from three-point range. It just feels like a game we're going to be seeing points upon points in for Northern Colorado, 305th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Eastern Washington, 264th. I will say this for Eastern Washington. They are giving up about 12 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. But I do think that for Eastern Washington, the versatility here is going to win out. You've got Cedric Howard, who's stands right around about 6'6", 14 points, 6 half boards. He shoots 42.5% from three-point range. Dane Erikstrup along with Jake Hyman are a pair of guys that stand north of 6'6", and Erikstrup, a D2 transfer. He is 6'11". He gives you 11.5 points on 42% three-point shooting. Now, these are lazy big men, as Coward is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5.7 rebounds per game, though you have been able to have Luwan Watts be able to chip in there about 5.5 rebounds per game as well, but for Northern Colorado, there's just too much based around one guy. And St. Thomas has been tremendous. 20 points, 3.5 assists, 10 boards, 1.7 steals on 34.5% three-point shooting for a team that only turns the ball over 11 times per contest. They shoot about 35% from three-point range. But that said, with the way that both of these teams have been defending in general, it is a big, giant issue that you've got with them. And I mean, these are a pair of teams that they really do benefit from being at home. You've got very tough travel out there in this conference. It's a Northern Colorado team that they're about 61st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and it's an Eastern Washington team that they're clocking in 96. But for Eastern Washington, they are scoring about 26.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. Eastern Washington is the Monstars at home. On the road/in a neutral court environment, it's relatively rough. And for Northern Colorado, bottom 75 team with regards to rebound rate, because nobody outside of St. Thomas is able to give you north of 4.2 rebounds per game. You do have Tashore Reeves, who's been able to chip in their 14 points on 36% three-point shooting, and got a 37.5% three-point shooter in Langston Reynolds, who's been able to give you about 7.5 points per contest. He's been rising up a little bit, but without having anything down low other than St. Thomas, I do think that Eastern Washington going to just continue to light it up with regards to their offense. It's a Northern Colorado team that they have gotten to at least 77 points in each of their last 8 games, and I believe they have given up at least 75 points in all but one of them. Meanwhile, it's an Eastern Washington team that this team has been a rocket ship themselves with regards to their offense. Here in conference, they have scored at least 77 points in every single one of their games, so points aplenty here. I did set my total 168.5. I'm looking at the over, and with regards to the spot, I did set Eastern Washington as a favorite of 6.5 points. Now that we're getting to 7, I do think that we're getting a little bit too lofty, so at 7+, I'm going to be looking at the points with Northern Colorado, and we're going to be taking a look at this total over 8:15, 8:16 on the betting board. Montana State is the road face-off against Sacramento St. Sac State finds themselves as a favorite of 1 point, and your total on this game, it is between 137.5 and 138.5. With Sacramento State did set them as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1 with them. It's a Sacramento State team that certainly has been a team that's not been able to take care of the ball. They are in the bottom 20 in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, 15.1 turnovers per them, but you've got Duncan Boom Boom Poe, who's able to control things just in all facets of the game. 13.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 assists. Doesn't shoot it well from three-point range, but that's why you've got Z Harmoda along with Alex Patterson. Patterson is able to give you 8+ points per contest on 39.5% three-point shooting. Harmoda, a steal, 35.5% three-point shooter with about 12.5 points per contest, going up against a Montana State team that they've been a little bit of a slower tempo team, but it's a Montana State team that has really just been having an issue in general with regards to giving up points. This team has allowed now 70+ points in 8 out of their last 9 games, and for that matter, they have allowed at least 70 points in all but one of their games ever since the really game that they played against UC Riverside before Thanksgiving. They even lost to Rocky Mountain College in late November, so this has been a team that's been all over the place, and they just rely upon Robert Ford to do too much. 14.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 40.5% from three-point range as a guy that only stands about 6 feet tall. You don't have anyone else on the roster that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, and that'd be the 15.5 points, 4.5 boards of Brian Garaki, who's been able to do a solid job, but this is a Montana State team that's well outside the top 230 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They go up against the Sacramento State team that they've been having their woes all season long. Akal Muane not being the guy that he was a season ago, only giving you about 3 rebounds per game. That has been a little bit of an issue for this team, and it is a Sacramento State team that they themselves are 248th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Montana State, meanwhile, they've actually done a halfway decent job of being able to guard the arc. They're a top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Where they just get crushed, though, is when I was alluding to a little bit before. Robert Ford is the only guy that's able to grab a rebound with them having no size whatsoever. This team is just getting it taken to them inside. Montana State, 337th with opponent two-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot 61% from inside the arc in a road/neutral court environment. Outside of SWAC teams, that is dead last in all of college basketball, and that's where I think that they're going to be unraveled in this game. David Patrick always preaches a lot of low post play with his teams, and I do think that Sacramento State wins this game from within, which is why I did set them as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1, and with regards to this total, we've seen Sacramento State slow things down quite a bit more recently, and this is a Montana State team that they've got their issues with regards to just efficiency in general, and they do guard the arc. So I did set my total 136, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Sacramento State. 8:17, 8:18 on the betting board. It is South Dakota. They hit the road. They're facing off against Denver. Denver is an favorite of 10 points. Your total on this game is 162 to 162.5 with Denver. Set them as a 10-point favorite. I'm seeing a few 10.5s popping up, and the opener was 10.5, so if we can get back to a 10.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with South Dakota. It's a South Dakota bunch that certainly has been getting wrecked on defense, well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and now they do have to go toe-to-toe with one of the best offenses in all of college basketball. Denver, a top 35 team nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Tommy Bruner, Turner right now leads all of college basketball in terms of points per game. He's been able to supply the team with 25 points per contest. He's been able to shoot it in the high 30s/low 40s from three-point range with about 4.2 assists per contest. And as a whole, it's a Denver team that, despite going up tempo, they only turn the ball over 9.8 times per contest. And we've got some nice ancillary pieces as well. A pair of Pac-12 transfers in Jackson Brenchley comes in from Utah, 5.5 boards, 7.5 points with a steal per contest. And Teku Tanemo, who comes over from Stanford, 8.5 boards, 17.5 points. Both of these guys should right around about 31% from distance. But you've got another Utah transfer that I think is going to be impactful in this game. Lahat Thione. He comes in from Utah along Central Florida, and he for South Dakota is able to average a double-double. 13 points, 10 boards, doesn't have the versatility that some big men have, but overall, it's a South Dakota team that they do shoot about 35.5% from three-point range to 13.5 turnovers per game. That's been a little bit unsightly, but they get to go up against the Denver defense has certainly been allowing open looks from three-point range, 277th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and just look at this Denver defense, 321st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a South Dakota team that certainly has their warts on the defensive side of things. For South Dakota, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, 254th in all of college basketball, but you also have Caleb Stewart, who's been able to shoot about 40% from three-point range for a South Dakota team that, really outside of Caleb Stewart, it's been a little bit hit or miss with guys like Boston Holt, Paul Bruns being able to give you about 21.5 points per contest. They both have been inefficient three-point shooters, but for Caleb Stewart, he was missing for a few games. He returned back in the fold in that game against South Dakota State most recently, so he should be good to go in this one. I think that's a big difference maker. And then you've got another 40% three-point shooter, Max Burchill, who's now been able to give you about 6.5 points per contest, but has been able to emerge recently. 8+ points in 3 of the team's last 5 games, saw a few more minutes while Stewart was out of the fold and a little bit of added confidence. This is a South Dakota team that it's been rough for them on defense, to say the least, but at the very least, they've been able to do a little bit of a better job of slowing games down in regulation. They've actually scored fewer than 70 points in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, this is a Denver defense that, against D1 competition, they have allowed at least 80 points in all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of December. So I do think that South Dakota going to be able to get things cooking here. I did set my total at 164. I'm going to be looking at the over. And with Denver, made them a 10-point favorite, so at 10.5 plus, winning the points with South Dakota to go along the over. 819, 820 on the betting board. Oregon is going to be playing us Arizona State, and Arizona State does find themselves as underdogs of 8.5 points. So on this game is 145.5 with Oregon. Set them as a 9-point favorite. I thought we would get a little bit of a better number, but I am willing to lay the 8.5 here with this Oregon bunch. They now get N'Faly Dante back at the fold, and that is massive. He had 21 rebounds in that first game of the season against Georgia. Just have not seen a lot out of him, but I mean, he's been back now for 3 games. In those 3 games, it has been an Oregon team that has been able to do a solid job with regards to their offense, getting to at least 70 points in every one of them. It was part of the mountain road trip. You could tell that he needed to find his bearings in those games against Colorado and Cal, as he came out in that last game against Utah, and he looked like the N'Faly Dante that we all know and love. 23 points, 10 boards, 6 assists, just absolutely tremendous, and that is going to be big for Oregon moving forward, as you've also got Jackson Shelsay, who does a nice job manning the backcourt, shooting about 40.5% from three-point range, 13.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest for an Oregon team that this is not the same Oregon defense that we've seen in past years in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This team is 146th in all of college basketball, but they're much better at home, giving up about 13.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot-to-corner environment. And for Arizona State, this is a bunch that they're still outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Doing a good job on defense at 69th, very nice in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 12.2 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. And this is an Arizona State team that they just don't have much from the outside. They're shooting 31.5% from three-point range. Jose Perez is actually shooting 50% from 3. Certainly expect to see a fall off there, but the big key for this Oregon team, taking care of the ball. Arizona State has been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, with Frankie Collins in the top 5 nationally in terms of steals, as he's been able to log 14 points, 5 boards, 3 steals, 3.5 assists on about 33% three-point shooting, and it is an Arizona State team that they do a great job with that aspect, but where they get destroyed is on glass. Arizona State outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, with Oregon getting Dante back at the fold, with Oregon also having a few guys like a KJ Evans giving you about 8.5 points, 5.5 boards, not doing anything great, but it's a nice little stat sheet suffer. Having Kerry Oquendo shoot north of 41% from three-point range, and it seemed as though with an injury to Nate Biddle all season long, but now it looks like he's trying to return to the fold, tried to give it a go against Colorado, was unable to. I think he's going to be out in this game, but appears as though there might be a chance that he might be able to go in this one, and Jermaine Cuisinart giving you 14.5 points per contest. I do think that Oregon is going to bring down a Arizona State team that has had a nice start to Pac-12 play, but I do think that the defense is eventually going to get exposed a little bit more. They've given up 70-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, and this is an Oregon team that has really been able to ascend with their offense. Last time they were held below 70 points. You have to look back at their game against UCLA, where that was a 64-59 slog. Sans that this has been a team that has gotten to at least 70 points in 7 out of their last 8 games. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay with Oregon, and I did set my total at a 145 looking at Oregon, and I'm going to be looking at the 145.5 under, as I don't think Arizona State does their part with this total. 821, 822 on the betting board. Southern Indiana plays us to Western Illinois. Western Illinois does find themselves as a 2 to 2.5 point road favorite, with your total between 132.5 and 134, with Western Illinois made them a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I don't think that Western Illinois is getting the fair shrift that they deserve. This team has actually been really good defensively, a top 125 team nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Western Illinois has really had a change in philosophy ever since they had the coaching regime change when Rob Jeter decided to go to Southern Utah. They've really slowed it down. As for Western Illinois, in terms of total possessions per game, 273rd in all of college basketball. Southern Indiana, they lost all of their good scoring from a season ago. Each of their top 5 scorers out of the fold. That has led to them being now about 115th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And the Southern Indiana offense has not rebounded from that. And the defense, it remains distinct. 204th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Western Illinois team that's not necessarily going to light you up from 3-point range, but what they do have is a big advantage down low, and that would be Adam Cisse. Adam Cisse has been one of the top rebounders in all of college basketball, supplying the team with 8.5 points, 12 boards, which is 3rd in all of college basketball, along 2.5 blocks per contest. Now, A.J. Smith on the flip side for Southern Indiana has not been bad. He's been able to give you about 9 boards, 12.5 points per game, but this is a Southern Indiana team that last year was the top 30 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage, down to 31% this season. Really, other than the 40.5% 3-point shooting and 8.5 points of Jack Melky, you don't have really any outside forces for this team. They're also turning the ball over about 14 times per contest. Western Illinois is a squad that has been not really giving you a whole bunch of steals or anything like that, but they do have a guy in the backcourt that I really like in Ryan Myers. Began his career over at Iona. He's been able to shoot about 46.5% for distance, 13 points, 2.5 assists per game, while James Dent is a guy that is really just floating out there, doing a little bit of everything on offense and defense, 14 points, 5 boards, doesn't necessarily shoot a great from 3-point range, but that's why you've got J.J. Calcan, who's now been able to shoot north of 46% from 3-point range, double figures in 4 of the last 5 games. He's been a big reason why Western Illinois has been able to ascend here recently with Western Illinois. This is a team that they had their win streak broken up with a 58-57 loss against Tennessee State, but this team has now just stuck teams into the mud. 64 points or fewer surrendered in each of their last 5 games, and the last time this team gave up north of 70 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to November. That was against Wisconsin, where they gave up 71. So this is a team that is doing a great job defensively. I think that you get a slowed down slog with Western Illinois being able to pull it out. Set them as a 6.5 point favorite. One away in the number. Set my total 130.5. So also looking under 823, 824 on the betting board. Loyola Marymount plays us to Portland. Portland is an underdog of 9.5 to 10 points. Total on this game is 150, and I did set Portland as an underdog of 9.5 points. At the 10, this is my buy point on Portland. As for this Portland team, you do have someone that's able to really control the game and is able to give you a bit of everything in Tyler Robertson. He's able to supply the team with 15 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. I do like what he's able to bring to the table. Now the question is, can Portland, a team that's outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a team that's just been really not doing a good job of guarding the arc, 320th with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, come up with just even a modicum amount of stops? As for this Portland team, you now have two Yamanachi Williams coming back into the fold. He comes in from the Southland. I believe that he was either at Lamar or one of those other schools, but I'm pretty sure it was Lamar, and he's come in, he's been able to give the team 13 points, 6 boards per contest, is capable of popping threes as well, shooting 44% from 3-point range, so that's a breath of fresh life for this team. Meanwhile, you've got a Loyola Marymount team that they're looking to play relatively slowly. The defense has not really been there because they just don't have a lot of guys that are able to hit the glass. Alex Merkfeldes has been your top rebounder with about 6.3 rebounds per game. Kelly IUPUI, who last season gave you 13.5 points, north of 6 rebounds per game. We've seen some serious slippage with him. He's been able to give you 9 points, 5 boards. He's played a little bit better recently, but you're just expecting a lot more out of him. It's a Loyola Marymount team that, with regards to the rebound rate, they're about 77th in all of college basketball, so despite the fact that you don't have that main headline rebounder, they've been solid there in Portland. 292nd in the country with this regard. I do think that Yamanachi Williams is going to be all up with that. Of Loyola Marymount, to their credit, they really don't turn the ball over a lot. 11.5 turnovers per game, Justice Hill has been able to do a relatively efficient job with fewer than 2 turnovers per game, getting the ball to guys like another Justin and Justin Wright, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. But this is a Portland team that saw have some good versatility on the team, and overall, it is a team that they do shoot about 34% from three-point range. Tyler Harris, 39.5% three-point shooter, 7.5 boards, 12 points per contest. You've been able to have Elamami Karama give you about 9.5 points, 4 boards per contest, while Chris Austin is now shooting about 38.5% from three-point range, has come back from injury. It's a Portland team that's able to score. Their offense has been relatively solid. The defense has been a complete and utter abject disaster, 85 plus points surrender in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Loyola Marymount, has been a team that has been able to rise up a little bit more with regards to their defense, as they've given up 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, but now they've been held to fewer than 70 points in 3 out of their last 5 games as well. So it's a situation of something's got to give. With Portland at 10 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points. I think that Yamanachi Williams helps out down low, and I do think that Portland, they're going to be able to get theirs against a Loyola Marymount team that still, with regards to their three-point shooting defense, it's leaving a little bit of something to be desired with Loyola Marymount in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're allowing them to shoot 36% in a roadside shoot corner environment, 28% at home. I think that these numbers iron out just a little bit, so going to be looking at the over 7x12, 151.5, and at 10 plus, going to be looking at the points. With Portland, 825, 826 on the betting board. Santa Clara plays us at Pepperdine, and the Waves of Pepperdine are an underdog of 8.5 points. Total on this game between 152 and 152.5. So Santa Clara is a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Pepperdine has actually really slowed down their tempo, but they are allowing opponents to shoot, and I'm not kidding here, 47.5% from three-point range away from home. Now, I do think that there should be a little bit of improvement there. Heck, if they have nobody out there on the floor, there should be improvement with that number. But that said, I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Santa Clara. Santa Clara just has this team completely outsized. Christoph Tilley is a 7-footer that's able to give you about 5 boards per contest. Gotta love what you've been able to get out of the American transfer in Johnny O'Neal. He's able to give you 9 points. He does not work for the American Eagles anymore, so no longer is he in blue jeans. He has instead stepped up. He has made things all fancy with being able to shoot some threes at north of a 30% clip, 9 points per contest, and with the Santa Clara team, they've already knocked off 3 Pac-12 teams along with Gonzaga, and this is a Santa Clara team that, while they do have some of their warts defensively, they're outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do an okay job of guarding the three-point arc. They allow opponents to shoot about 32.7% from three-point range. Good news for this Pepperdine team is that Javon Porter is back in the fold. That is the brother of Michael Porter. Ever since he's been able to return, he's been able to give the team right around about 5 rebounds per game at 6'6", 6'7". He's able to pop a few threes, as well as he's been able to shoot about 33% from distance, 5.5 rebounds per game. But it's really Houston Mallett and Michael Ajay who have been the transformers on offense, giving you a combined 33 points per contest. And Ajay continues to shoot 48% from three-point range. It's a Pepperdine team that also shoots 67.5% at the charity stripe. But man, this Pepperdine team, they're just getting absolutely destroyed on defense. Bringing in Javon Porter has done absolutely nothing to help out with that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Of your 362 Division I teams, Pepperdine, they're clocking in 337. So that is very much less than tremendous. It's a Pepperdine team that they only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, but this is a Pepperdine team that they've also now scored approximately 61 points in their last 2 games. And when you've got a defense like that has given up 77 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, including a loss at home against Santa Clara by a count of 78-72. They lose that game, by the way, despite the fact that they played pretty much even up with regards to three-point shooting percentage, and despite the fact that they won the turnover battle, I do think that they're going to be fighting an uphill battle in this one, especially with them now having hit the road. So I did set Santa Clara as a 10-point favorite. I think that their three-point shooting numbers, they went 7 for 20 of that game. It's going to be a little bit better here to allow them to cover that number. And I did set my total at a 150. I think that you get a relatively equal amount of scoring that we saw the previous time in Santa Clara. They've been doing a relatively okay job with regards to their perimeter defense. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Santa Clara. 827, 828 on the betting board. Cal State Fullerton, it's a road face-off against Cal Poly. Cal Poly just find themselves as an underdog of 5.5 to 6.5 points. So on this game is between 130 and 131. And with Cal Poly, I did set them as an underdog of 5.5 points. Here at the 6.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points as a Fullerton team that is well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And the defense just has not been there. That is because they are well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, We've gotten Torrey San Antonio back in the fold after he was missing for the first 9 games of the season. 8 points, about 4 boards, but this team also shoots about 32.5% from 3. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they're a bottom 75 team in the country with that regard. And you've got a Cal Poly team that is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a bottom 50 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is a Cal Poly team that's 278th with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it does fall to about 32.7% when they are at home. They only have to really guard against 2 guys, Max Jones, Dominic Bruton. These 2 guys have been able to combine for 3.3 steals, 4.5 assists. Jones shoots 40% from 3-pointers with 17 points per contest. Bruton about 14.5 points per game. But for this Fullerton team, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. I mean, this Cal Poly team is awful on the glass. They're in the bottom 50. Joel Armitraden is right now leading the way with about 4.7 rebounds per game. But I mean, ironically enough, Cal Poly is best scorer in this game. That would be Kobe Sanders, 18 points, 2.5 assists, shooting only about 30.5% from 3-pointers for a Cal Poly team as a whole. They're shooting about 31.5% from the outside. Paul Bazima, he needs to give you a little bit more with about 5.5 points per contest. But Jared Hyder coming in from Cal and Fresno State, so able to give you about 10 points, 2.5 assists, a steal and a half per contest. This is a Fullerton team that's really having a tough time taking care of the ball, and I think both of these teams are going to have an issue being able to put the ball in the basket. It's a Fullerton team that have really been getting held down with regards to their offense. This team has outscored 71 points or fewer in all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of December. Meanwhile, you've got a Cal Poly team that's fresh off of scoring 61 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. So I did set my total 125.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and at north of 6, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Cal Poly. 829, 830 on the betting board. UC San Diego plays UC Riverside, and Riverside does find themselves as a underdog of 8.5 points. Total on this game between 139.5 and 140.5, and when it comes to Riverside, I did set them as an underdog of 11.5 points. So this is a spot where I'm going to be willing to lay with UC San Diego. San Diego does find themselves in the top 125 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for Riverside, they've got the best scorer out there on the floor. That'd be Bryce Pope. Pope has been able to give you 18 points, shooting about 34% from 3-point range as a team. San Diego shooting about 36% from the outside, giving you only about 10 turnovers per game, and this has been a bunch of, they don't have that one guy that's going to give you a whole bunch of rebounds, but by committee, they've been relatively solid with having about 6 rebounds per game out of Emmanuel Shaminga. Has been a little bit out of the fold, and he should be back for this game. He's been a 7-footer that's come in from UC Irvine and has been able to give you about a block per contest. Francis Newark, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per contest as well with UC San Diego in terms of their overall rebound rate. This team has been clocking in right around about 217th in all of college basketball, going up against a Riverside team that's more around 200th. But for Riverside, this team is well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and where this Riverside team really gets hurt is from the outside. UC Riverside, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 344th in all of college basketball. Now, for Riverside, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. Only about 10 turnovers per contest, but they themselves are not really good from 3-point range. They are feeling like Moses, though, as Isaiah Moses has been a top scorer for the team, being able to supply the team with about 13 points per contest. He's been able to throw in there about 4.5 assists, shooting 36% from 3-point range for a team as a whole. They shoot 31% from the outside. Brandon Hardress has been able to give you about 4 boards, a steal, and right around about 11 points per contest, along with those 4 assists per game as well. But you don't have a single guy in this roster other than Kyle Owens that gives you north of 4.1 rebounds per game. He gives you about 4.5 boards per contest. This is a Riverside team that they've been able to win some games recently. I'm really not sure how. This team has been all over the place with regards to their offense. They have scored 56 points or fewer in 2 of their last 3 games, and it's a UC San Diego team that's starting to put the clamps down defensively. 61 points or fewer surrendered in 3 of their last 5 games. I do think that UC San Diego going to be able to take control of this game. They've got the best offensive weapons in this game, so I did set my number at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in. With regards to the total, I did set my total at a 135.5. So seeing the 139.5, 140, looking at the under, I just don't think that Riverside does their part. I'm willing to lay it with San Diego. 831, 832 on the betting board. Portland State plays us in Montana. Montana does find themselves as a 5 to 5.5 point road favorite. Your total on this game is between 148 and 148.5. With Montana, I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. So here at 5.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a Portland State team that has been able to do a relatively solid job by committee of just finding ways to be able to hang in games. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 11 points per contest. Really an opposite team of what we saw last season when Cameron Parker was your top scorer and everyone was just trying to follow his lead. Now it's a bunch that you've got the whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, as KJ Allen has been able to do a solid job being able to give you about 10.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. All in all, it is a Portland Portland State team that they only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest. You've been able to have a main facilitator in Ismail Habib, who's been able to give you about 2.5 assists per game as well. And then when it comes to this Portland State team, they've been okay with regards to their defense. It's nothing great. It's nothing terrible. This team can be a little bit vulnerable from time to time from the perimeters, especially when they're on the road. As on the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 40% from three-point range. That falls to 26.5% from three-point range at home. And they do go up against a Montana team that has Aiden Moody now finding his shot. He's been able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range this season. Just a few weeks ago, that was sub 30% from distance. They do face off against the Portland State team, though, that it's about 183rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With this Montana team, they're clocking in 231st. And other than Lalau, okay, you don't have a single guy for this Montana State team that is giving you really north of 6 rebounds per game. While for Portland State, only other than KJ Allen, nobody gives you north of 6 boards per contest. But this is a Montana team that I think they're going to have a little bit of a difficult time on the glass. They're about 113th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and it's a Portland State team that they certainly have been falling on some tough times with this regard, but they've been able to have just a lot of guys step up, give you those like 5 or so rebounds per game. Jarrell Satterfield has been able to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range. He's chipping in there 2 steals. He's chipping in there about 9 to 10 points per contest while being able to give you in that neighborhood about 4.5 or so rebounds per game. With Montana, you've been able to have Brandon Whitney be able to give you an assist-to-turnover ratio darn near 3, which has been able to help out this team with regards to their efficiency, only about 10.5 turnovers per game. Montana also does shoot 78% at the free throw line. I do think that is very important, but this is also a Montana team that they just don't guard the same way when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. This is a Montana team that, while they are about 231st with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 14.1 points more per 100 possessions outside of Missoula. So this is a circumstance where I do think the Portland State holds in there. Anything north of 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points. And did set my total at 145. This is a Montana team that's well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and Portland State has really been going into a slowdown mode as well. So looking at the under and looking at the points with Portland State. 833, 834 on the betting board. Long Beach State plays UC Irvine. Zot, the Anteaters find themselves as 4-point favorites. Your total is between 152.5 and 153. Did set the Irvine Anteaters as a 3.5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take 4+ here with Long Beach State. Long Beach State has a Traores. I think are going to be able to keep them in this game. Lucina Traore, a little bit more of a low post presence that has done an amazing job of just eating up the glass. 12 points, 10 boards. He doesn't necessarily give you a lot of shot blocks, but he makes sure that other teams don't get a lot of second chances. Now, this is a Long Beach State team that's one of your most, shall we say, brutal three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, 31.5%. You've got Marcus Siones, who is just sort of a chucker, 18 points, 2.5 assists. He only shoots about 25% from three-point range, but I've liked what I've seen out of Jaden Jones. Jaden Jones has been a little bit in and out of the fold. I expect him to play in this game, though. 12 points, shoots 36% from three-point range. Meanwhile, you've got Amadou Traore, who just is a stat sheet sufferer, 13 points, 4.5 assists, 2 steals, 8 rebounds. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from three-point range. And Issa Silver, coming over from Stanford, only giving you about 3.5 points per game. That has been a big, giant disappointment. Meanwhile, you've got an Irvine team that's going to have the best floor general out there. That'd be Pierre Cockrell. He doesn't give you a lot of scoring, only in the neighborhood of about 7 points per contest, but 6 assists to 2.3 turnovers per game for an Irvine team that they shoot about 36.5% from three-point range. This is an Irvine team that I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job on the glass, but that said, this is an Irvine team that they really pride themselves on being able to guard the arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.3% from three-point range in a roadside shoot court environment, and Long Beach State really goes away from the arc. They're a team that, despite the fact that they play at a breakneck pace, they're really looking to pound it down low. This is an Irvine team that still is a top 85 team in the country with regards to rebound rate, but with this Long Beach State team having the Traores both be able to give you 9+ rebounds per game, with them being a top 150 team with regards to their rebound rate as well, I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job holding up against an Irvine team that you got Justin Owen, you got Aaron Henry, who have both been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range, combining for about 2 steals. Owen has been able to give you 13.5 points per contest, and Devin Tills has got good versatility, shooting 37.5% from distance as well. But this is a Long Beach State team that they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to lock it down from three-point range. Long Beach State is allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range only 27% from three-point range at home. I do think the Long Beach State going to do a solid job at home. In the end, I do think that Irvine pulls it out, but here at the 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Long Beach State, and did something total 153.5. This is an Irvine team that has been running a lot more recently. Now, I will say for Irvine, since conference play has began, they've given up 70 points or fewer in all but one of their Big West games, but this is a Long Beach State team that they have an uncanny and an innate ability to be able to speed you up. I also do think that you're going to be in for a little bit of late game fouling, as well as you've got a Long Beach State team that they have certainly been giving up the points, 75 plus in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've also reached 74 in each of their last 5. So why not the over semi total 153.5, and we'll take 4 plus here with Long Beach State. 835, 836 on the betting board. CSUN, Cal State Northridge plays us to Cal State Bakersfield. Meet the Roadrunners find themselves as 3.5 to 4-point underdogs. Your total is 145. Did set my number at a 6. I'm going to be willing to lay with CSUN. A little bit of a tough go of it recently for a CSUN team that had been covering left and right all season long prior to these last 2 games, but it's still a CSUN team that has been a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and this is still a team that has been able to do a good job with their defense, despite the fact that they're a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game. Cal State Northridge, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they do find themselves a top 95 team in the country with this regard, and Cal State Bakersfield, they're a slow team that they just don't play any defense whatsoever. Bakersfield, 235th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 8.2 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. Now, credit where credit is due. Bakersfield has looked better on defense recently in regulation because they've had a few games go to overtime on them. As a matter of fact, 2 out of their last 4. They have given up now 67 points or fewer in each of their last 4, so some credit where it is due. And this has been a Northridge team that's been getting held down a little bit more recently, fewer than 70 points in each of their last 2 games, but I do think that Northridge, having a pair of guys in Deontay Bosick along Deshaun Allen Ikens, being able to give you combined about 32.5 points, 9.5 boards, I think that they're going to be able to bust through. And Allen Ikens now shooting about 40% from 3-point range. This is a Bakersfield team that they seriously do give up the art. Now, CSUN, they only shoot about 32% from 3-point range as a collective, but your top guys shoot it well from 3, and for Bakersfield, 293rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, it's a CSUN team that they're about 178th with this regard, but I mean, it's a Bakersfield team that they just rely a little bit too much on their main man, as you've been able to have Caleb Higgins be just going into inferno mode time and time again. He's able to give you 17 plus points per contest. He's the only guy on the roster, though, that gives you north of 10 points per game, and this is a Bakersfield team that is going to have a really rough time matching up with a CSUN team that's been able to do a good job on the glass. As for Bakersfield, their rebound rate currently 226 in all of college basketball. Modestus Conqueleles is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 3.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, you've been able to get a little bit more with about 8.3 points per contest out of Marvin McGee III. He's someone that shoots about 35.5% from 3, but for Bakersfield, they shoot just 29.5% from distance. I do think that CSUN, after having a pair of rough performances, they're going to be able to bounce back, and for Bakersfield, they were coming off a nice win against Cal Poly, but again, it is Cal Poly. So I did set my number at 6. I'm going to be willing to lay it with CSUN, and with regards to the total, I did set my total at 142, as I just don't think that Bakersfield going to do their part with this total. Super slow team that has had their issues being able to bomb it from 3-point range. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with CSUN, 837, 838 on the betting board. It is Pacific. They hit the road. They're facing off against St. Mary's. St. Mary's a 27.5 to a 28-point favorite. Your total on this game is 136.5. Good grief. This is a number where I think we've went a little bit too far. This Pacific team stinks. There's no question about it. I set my number at a 25. I'm going to be looking at the points. And for St. Mary's, they have shaken off what was some bad shooting variance at the beginning part of the season. They were just really not able to find themselves. Ada Mahaney is now back to giving you double figures, shooting it much better from 3-point range. And they're going up against a Pacific team that's outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You don't have anyone on the roster that is giving you really north of 12 points per contest, has given you north of 6 rebounds per game, so it's been relatively rough there. Judson Martindale has had to do a little bit of everything with about 10.5 points per contest, but I do think that with St. Mary's being a bottom 50 team in terms of total possessions per game, it's just hard to win by this sort of margin, even with a team that is as poopy as Pacific is. It is still a St. Mary's team that's shooting about 32% from 3-point range. They've done a better job cutting down on the turnovers with about 11.5 per contest, and this is always a team that's one of the best in all of college basketball. Their defensive rebound rate, you've been able to have a pair of guys, Mitchell Saxon, Josiah Jefferson, they've been able to combine for about 15 or so rebounds per game, and this is a Pacific team that they certainly are giving it up from 3-point range. Pacific, with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, they're about 251st in all of college basketball, but I do think that with Pacific being able to get Nick Blake, be able to give you about 11 points, give you a few rebounds per game, that's going to be able to help this team out a little bit. I think that this is just a case where the number has went a little bit too far, and because it is going to be such a low-scoring game, I just don't think that you're going to be able to get there. This is a Pacific team that they have been able to get past the 75-point plateau in 2 out of their last 5 games. One of those games did require overtime, but this has been a Pacific team that they have really just been stuck all season long against Division I competition. They have had their issues all year long. Since that game where they knock off Cal, it has been just a brutal struggle for them. They had scored 73 points or fewer in all but 2 of their games against Division I competition thus far this season, and for the St. Mary's team, 60 points or fewer surrendered in each of their last 4 games. So I just don't think you get enough scoring for and over in this spot. I think that the number has just gone a little bit too far. I did set my number at 25, so looking at the points with Pacific, maybe my total 133, so also looking at the under 839, 840 on the betting board. It is Arizona on the road facing off against Oregon State. Oregon State, a underdog of 18 points at home. Total on this game is 149. Another case where I think we've got a big number, but I don't think it's gone quite far enough. I set my number at an 18.5. So this is really the max I'm willing to lay with Arizona, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Arizona. It's not been savory for them, to say the least, over the last few games, but still, this is an Arizona team that does rank in the top 25 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Scale above has been much more efficient this year, giving you 18 points per contest. Paul Larson is able to shoot north of 50% from three-point range. Now, what I will say about Oregon State is that they are a much different team when they're at home rather than in a roadside-neutral environment. We saw them in that mountain road trip just get completely slaughtered in both games. That was just really bad, and for Oregon State, they are ranking in terms of offensive efficiency about 278th in all of college basketball, but they are scoring at home about 13 more points per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment. And with regards to the defense of this Oregon State team, has now slipped outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But again, they are giving up about 24 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. I just don't think that they match up with Umar Bello and his 9 rebounds per game, though. For Oregon State, you do have someone in Tyler Blood who is able to give you 12.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Casey Mbakwe along with Michael Rataj have been able to combine for about 11 rebounds per game, but for Oregon State, 13 turnovers per game. Jordan Pope is a nice scorer, 17 points on 38% three-point shooting, but Kylan Boswell has been very efficient for this Arizona team. And for Arizona, it's either they blow you out or they lose outright. The lone exception was that UCLA game that legitimately I felt like they should have probably lost, but I mean, this has been an Arizona team that they've been quite good with their defense. They have given up 73 points or fewer in really all but one of their games here in Pac-12 play over their last 6. They did give up 81 to Cal, but they scored 100 themselves. They've been able to do a little bit of a better job recently ever since giving up that 100 spot to Stanford. I just don't know if Oregon State is going to be able to do their part with regards to this total, which is why I set my total at 146.5, diving in on the under, and I do think that Arizona is able to win in pretty much every facet of the game, despite the fact that this could be a little bit of a rough road trip. Going to Corvallis, never easy, but I think that Arizona does it well here. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 18 with Arizona and looking at the under. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 841, 842, UC Santa Barbara. It's ready to face off against Hawaii. Rainbow Warriors are a 4-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 136.5 with Hawaii. I did set them as a favorite of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is a Hawaii team that has been very rough in terms of their offense, to say the least, but this is a UC Santa Barbara team that has been very rough with regards to their defense. Meanwhile, the Hawaii offense has been really having a tough time just getting the ball inside, but this defense, it does rank in the top 85 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for UC Santa Barbara, typically this is a stalwart on defense. They're now 161st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I will say this about the Santa Barbara defense, though. They are allowing about 6 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside-neutral court environment rather than at home, but traveling to Hawaii in multiple time zones is a little bit of a different animal. You've got the best scorer out there on the floor in favor of Santa Barbara, and A.J. Mitchell. He's been able to give you 19.5 points, 4 assists, shooting 40% from three-point range, and Santa Barbara has been a really good three-point shooting team. They're shooting 39% from distance. Yohan Traore has been able to give you about 5 boards, 15 points per contest, and this is a Hawaii team that's right around 200th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but this is also a Santa Barbara team that they have been just very strange with regards to the way that they're guarding the arc. At home, opponents are shooting 35.9% from three-point range, 27.2% in a road/neutral court environment. Going up against a Hawaii team that you do have most sec down lows, they will give you about a block per contest. Ariel Bland on the flip side for Santa Barbara, he's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, but it is a Santa Barbara team that when they brought in Yohan Traore, I thought that this team was going to be a very dominant force on the glass, and for Santa Barbara, they are about a 40th ranked team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but I do think that Hawaii going to do an okay job on the glass. They're not going to win the battle. They're right around about 140th, but I do like what I'm seeing out of Bernardo da Silva, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 7.5 points per contest, and then you've got good versatility with Justin McCoy giving you 11 points, 6 boards, has some size, shooting 40% from three-point range. I do think that having to travel to the island for Santa Barbara is going to be a little bit of an issue, especially with them having some issues with regards to their defense. While they have failed to get past 70 points in 3 of their last 5 games, meanwhile for Hawaii, defense has been right there. 70 points or fewer surrendered in 3 of their last 4 games. Just been the offense that needs to wake up. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring slog, but I do think that Hawaii is going to take advantage of a Santa Barbara defense that I feel like has been a little bit fortunate on the road. It's been a little bit unfortunate at home. I think that irons out. I do think that the travel takes it out of Santa Barbara. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4.5 with Hawaii. Semi total 133. So also looking at the under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-525, 306-526. Fairleigh Dickinson is playing us to Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut is a favorite of 1 to 1.5 points. So it's between 150.5 and 151.5. And when it comes to this Central Connecticut team, I did set them as a favorite of 3.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Fairleigh Dickinson is looking to play at warp speed. They're a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, but my oh my, this team cannot guard to save their lives. They're 266 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they really get no boost up when they are at home. This is a bunch that they're allowing 0.2 of a point fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-neutral court environment. Now, for Central Connecticut, they're outside the top 230 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and this is a team that they themselves, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're clocking in right around about 139th, and they've actually been giving up right around about 3 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. And I think that they're going to fully take advantage of a Fairleigh Dickinson team that, with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, is 306th in all of college basketball. They have just been getting pasted with that regard, allowing opponents to shoot 39% from three-point range at home. What has been the issue for Central Connecticut is down low. They don't necessarily have anyone that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, you've got John Moore on the flip side for Fairleigh Dickinson. He's able to give you about 7 boards, double-figure amounts of points per game. Ansley O'Moner, 15.5 points, 7.5 boards, mid-33 point shooter, but it's not like this Fairleigh Dickinson team is necessarily amazing from three-point range. With them not necessarily having a ton of size, Central Connecticut, I think, is going to be able to do a relatively solid job holding up down low. Kellen Amos has now been able to give you about 5 boards. He's chipping in there 11.5 points per contest. And then you got Alan Jean Rose along with Jaden Jones combined to shoot 37% from distance. Jean Rose, 16 points, 5 boards. Jones gives you about 12.5 points and 2 steals per contest. So I do think the Central Connecticut wins from the outside, and that allows them to be able to take a game that I think is going to be pretty high scoring. I did set my total 153.5. Looking at the over in Central Connecticut, I'm willing to lay up to 3 with them. 306-527, 306-528. Maine hopes to not get Maine. They play Albany. Albany does find themselves as an underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game is 149.5. So Maine is a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Maine team that has the top leader in steals from a season ago in Kellen Tynes. Kellen Tynes had 3 steals per contest last season, and while he's not duplicating quite that this year, with about 2.4 steals per contest, he's been able to give you 4 boards, 13.5 points per contest, and it does feel like it's a little bit of a better put-together Maine team. They are a team that's outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, but you do have Peter Filipowski give you 13.5 points, 7.5 boards. It's a Maine team that they only shoot about 30% from three-point range, but they're the far better team at being able to just guard the interior in this game, as Albany is actually 14th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Maine is a team that's had to look down low quite a bit more because they don't have a ton from the outside. Maine, they themselves, in terms of their three-point shooting defense, are about 124th in all of college basketball, but at home, that actually ascends to opponents shooting just 25% from three-point range, and despite the fact that Jonathan Beagle for this Albany team, he's able to give you 10-plus points, he's able to do a solid job pulling in their 9 rebounds per game. Albany is 273rd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. It's also an Albany team that, despite having Sebastian Thomas coming over from Rhode Island, he's been able to do a solid job giving this team 14-plus points per contest, doling out the ball. It is a team that has been turning the ball over nearly 14 times per contest. That is a red flag against a Maine team that has been one of the better teams at being able to generate those turnovers. And for Albany, 75-plus points allowed in 4 out of their last 5 games. Now, to their credit, they've gotten to at least 75 points in each of their last 4 games, but I think the Maine is going to be looking to slow this game down. 70 points or fewer surrendered in all but one of their games ever since Christmas, and I do think that a Maine team that has been close but no cigar in a lot of games breaks through. I did set Maine as a favorite of 5 points, willing to lay 4.5. Did set my total 155, so also looking at the under 306.529, 306.530. It is UMass Lowell playing us to Vermont. Vermont, an underdog of 1 to 2 points. Draw on this game is between 139 and 140. Very rare that you see Vermont as an underdog in an AEC game, and I think it's warranted. I'd like UMass Lowell to win the conference. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a UMass Lowell team that is a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You're now getting back Abdul Kareem Kulipali, who last season was able to give the team 11 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. They've been easing him back in the fold. I think that this could be the game where he goes a little bit more full bore, and even if he doesn't, you've got Max Brooks, you've got Cam Morris, a pair of guys that are able to combine for about 12.2 rebounds per game. Brooks, an all AAC Defensive Player 2 seasons ago. Morris is shooting 47% from three-point range. It is a Lowell team that they turn the ball over 13 times per contest, and Vermont always values the ball, only about 9 turnovers per game, but for Vermont, this team doesn't force any turnovers. They're a bottom 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, for Vermont, they're shooting about 37% from distance. Matt Verado needs to give you more than 3 rebounds per game at 6'8", but he's 11 points per contest. He's been able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range. That's pretty rock solid. On top of that, you've got TJ Lang, who's shooting north of 40% from three. He's been able to supply the team with 13 points per contest, and Shamir Bogues has actually been able to generate 2 steals per contest, and this is a Vermont team that, with regards to their interior defense, it's not too bad. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're actually 52nd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Vermont, they are 232nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Vermont team that they really do live on the outside. This is a UMass Lowell team that's number 2 in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, with a Yindi Akeem being someone that had a triple-double in a game a season ago. He's been a little bit of a do-it-all player for UMass Lowell, being able to supply 14-plus points per contest. He'll give out about 5 assists, 4-plus rebounds per game. I do think the UMass Lowell gets the job done against the big bad wolf out there in the AAC in Vermont. I set my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Made my total 137.5. I think that this is a low-scoring slog with a UMass Lowell team that is a top 80 team with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis. Diving in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Lowell. 306, 531, 306, 532. It is Bellarmine. They play us in North Florida. North Florida is a 2-point favorite, and your total, that is 142 with North Florida. I set them as a 2-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to trust in Bellarmine. It has been a rough go of it for Bellarmine, to say the least, this season, but now they get to go up against a North Florida team that they are giving it up from the outside. This North Florida team, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they are currently 250th in all of college basketball and in a road/shoots corner environment. Opponents are shooting 41.2% against them. That is the third worst mark in all of college basketball. Now for Bellarmine, they've been getting destroyed as well. Outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 220th with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a North Florida team that they're able to bomb it from 3-point range as well. You've got Chaz Lanier, who's been able to do a nice job shooting just below 40% from 3-point range, supplying the team with about 15 to 16 points per contest. Jake Vanderheijen, he's a 6'9" gentleman that comes in from Old Bucknell. He's been able to give you some outside shooting with about 8 points, 3 boards, 40% 3-point shooter, and this is a North Florida team that they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, but with North Florida, they don't press the issue on defense in terms of being able to generate turnovers, and for a Bellarmine team that they really do not have a lot down low. You've been able to get in that neighborhood about 6.5 or so rebounds per game out of Langston Hatton. He's actually up to 7 rebounds per game. Past that, you haven't really been able to get a whole heck of a lot, but that Achilles heel of Bellarmine being well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, not going to be exposed against a North Florida team that's 325th with regards to rebound rate. Ben Johnson has been able to give you about 13 points, 3.5 boards, shooting 36.5% from 3-point range. It's been an issue for this team not having Patch Weiland out there in the fold, but for the first time in north of a month, he was able to return against Eastern Kentucky. He's their number 2 scorer. He's been able to give you about 12 points per contest. That, I think, is really going to power this team to victory. He's also a guy that gives you 5 rebounds per game to help out down low for a Bellarmine team that, even though it's been wonky for the team this season, they've not gotten out of control, only about 10.5 turnovers per game, and it is a Bellarmine team that I think is going to ascend on offense, and they're going to take it to a North Florida team that, while they've been able to win 4 straight games, they have now given up 74-plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do like Bellarmine to be able to snap that North Florida win streak. I'm looking at them outright on the money line, and with regards to the total, I did set my total at a 144. I'm going to be looking at the over along with Bellarmine on the money line. 306, 533, 306, 534. Eastern Kentucky plays host to Jacksonville. Jacksonville finds themselves as underdogs of 10.5 points. Total on this game is anywhere between 148.5 and 149.5 with Jacksonville. Set them as an 11-point dog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with an Eastern Kentucky team that they have had their issues being able to guard the 3-point arc. For Eastern Kentucky, out of 362 teams, they are 362nd with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I tend to think that was bad variance. In the last 3 games, opponents are shooting just 29% from 3-point range against them, and Eastern Kentucky is still a bad perimeter defensive team, but it's not like they're going up against a Jacksonville team that's been a whole heck of a lot better at 308th in all of college basketball. In a road/shoot corner environment, teams are shooting 39.3% from 3-point range against Jacksonville. Jacksonville has been dealing with an injury to Bryce Workman, who's been their top rebounder, and this is a Jacksonville team that a few seasons ago, under this coaching staff, they really looked like they were going to be a stalwart on defense, and said that they are a turd on defense, as in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis for our good friends the Dolphins, 325th in all of college basketball, giving up about 23.5 points more per 100 possessions rather than in a road/shoot court environment. Meanwhile, you're going up against an Eastern Kentucky team that, yeah, they've got their warts on defense. They're more in the neighborhood of about 268th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got a lot of versatility when it comes to the team. Michael Moreno, 9.6 boards, shoots 40% from 3-point range as a 6'6" combo player. You've also got the nation's leader in blocks, Isaiah Kozart, 4 blocks, 10 boards, 15 points per contest. There's a possibility you might get a triple-double with blocks, as this is a team as a whole. They do shoot about 66.5% of the free throw line. If you do have trepidation with laying the number, it is that, but it's a Jacksonville team that they themselves shoot about 70.5% at the free throw line, 31% from three. I like what Marcus Nieblack is able to bring to the table. 3 assists, steal and a half, 12 points per contest. And Robert McCray, 16 points, steal and a half on 33% three-point shooting, has been relatively solid. It is a Jacksonville team that is sort of a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of team, and when it comes to Eastern Kentucky, typically this is a team that's lacking a little bit on the glass, but this year, 137th in the country with regards to rebound rate, with Jacksonville just not being able to hold up there at about 190th. I do think that Eastern Kentucky, they're going to be able to force some turnovers. They're still relatively solid with their active hands, be able to bomb it from three-point range in a high-scoring game that I think goes their way. I set Eastern Kentucky as an 11-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Set my total at 157 with a pair of defenses that are getting cooked, so we're going to have the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Eastern Kentucky. 36-5-35, 36-5-36. It is Long Island playing goes to Stony. Stony, an underdog of a point total on this game is 140. Did set Long Island as a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Stony team that's outside the top 250 in terms of points scored, points allowed on a per possession basis, in terms of rebound rate, and in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. If there is one thing that Long Island does well, it's guard the arc. They are a top 85 team in all of college basketball with that regard, and they get to go up against a Stony team that doesn't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. So while LIU is 345th in the country with regards to rebound rate, they're not going to get completely exposed there, and you've got both of the Stricklands, Ty and Terrell, playing under their father, Rod Strickland. Terrell Strickland, a little bit more of a facilitator, 3 assists, 7.5 points per contest. Ky is a little bit more of your scorer, 2 steals, 14 points, though he only shoots about 20% from three-point range. That's an issue on Long Island. They turn the ball over 14 times per contest. Stony turns the ball over about 14 times per contest. Max Zagorowski, about 12.5 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 36% from three-point range. Jackson Bengini, when he's been out there, has been solid, and he should be getting going this one. He's been dealing with injuries, has missed 7 games this season, but he's been able to supply about 12.5 points, shoots 38.5% for three-point range. But that lack of rebounding that you've got for the team, despite the fact that Tony Velder comes in from VMI, 3 assists, 12 points per contest, that has been a big, giant issue. It looked like they were going to get something out of Shane Odell this year. He's been out for multiple months, and it's a Stony team that they have just not been able to get their offense going here in NEC play in regulation, because I know that they have played at least one game that has went to overtime. So regulation and regulation only, 70 points or fewer in every one of these games. And for Stonehill, against Division I competition this year, they have exceeded the 71-point plateau just twice. Both of those games came in November. So it is a circumstance where I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slowed down, yucky game. I did set my total at a 142.5. I do think that there's a possibility of late game felling, and I do think that Stonehill is going to be giving up well north of 70 in this game to a Long Island team that it does feel like there's starting to get things sorted out as well. So here at this spot, I'm going to be taking a look at the over with Long Island. Set them as a 4.5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1. 306-537, 306-538. Wagner plays those to Merrimack. Merrimack is a 3-point road favorite. Your total 123.5 to 124.5. Merrimack is still a top 80 team in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but I could only set them as a 2-point favorite. This is actually a rematch of a game that we saw less than a week ago on the 19th of January. In that game, Wagner punked Merrimack on the road, winning that game by a count of 71-65, and the lifeblood of Merrimack is generating turnovers. Top 10 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Well, they ran into a Wagner team that's right now turning the ball over fewer than 10 times per contest. It's a Wagner team that has their deficiencies on offense. They're outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. The one thing they don't do is turn it over, and you've got Melvin Council. He had 15 points, 13 rebounds in that game. He's Mr. Do It All for Wagner. 14.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists. He's only shooting about 26.5% from 3. This is Wagner team as a whole. They shoot about 33% from the outside, and they get to go up against a Merrimack team that's in the bottom 45 in the country with regards to rebound rate. Now, Jordan DeCock probably going to be the best player in this game. He does it all. 4 assists, 6 boards, 17 points, 2.2 steals per contest. Well, he does everything except shoot threes at 24%. Merrimack as a whole, they do shoot only about 29% from distance, and they give it up as well. They do turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, and Wagner had a little bit of an issue towards the beginning part of the season with their defense. Well, Wagner not going through any defensive deficiencies right now. This is a Wagner team that's now given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 8 games. And if you want to date it back a little bit further, this team has given up 73 points or fewer in all but one of their games that have wrapped up in regulation this year. They've been able to do a tremendous job with that regard. They're still dealing with the injury to Zay Williams, but for Merrimack, you just need to get a little bit more from the outside. Devon Savage has been able to give you about 10 points, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, and Adam Clark gives you 4 assists, 10 points, north of 2 steals per contest. But with the way that Wagner takes care of of the ball. I actually think this is a bad matchup for Merrimack. I do think that Merrimack, in the end, is going to be able to get a little bit of revenge, but that said, because Wagner takes care of the ball, that'll lead to cleaner possessions and an over, in my opinion. I set my total 126, looking at the over, and could I set Merrimack as a 2-point favorite? So taking the 3 with Wagner and the over, 306.539, 306.540. St. Francis of Pennsylvania plays us to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart, a 4.5 to 5-point road favorite. Total on this game, 144 with Sacred Heart. Set them as a 7-point favorite, so I'm going to be looking to lay the number. It's a Sacred Heart team that, without Tanner Thomas, it has been a little bit wobbly for them, but they still have the best player in this game, and that would be one Mr. Nico Galletti. He stands right around 6'6", 14 points, 6 boards, only shoots about 30% from 3-point range, and you do want to note, he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. He missed their most recent game against Wagner, but even without him in the fold, the team was able to persevere, get a 66-61 win. The guy that really stepped up in his absence was Mr. Riley, as you had Joey Riley, who's been able to give you about 12 points per contest, shooting 40% from 3-point range. He went off for 21 big points in that one, and you still have Alex Sobel down low. Sobel's been able to give you 7.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. This is a Sacred Heart team that, with regards to rebound rate, they're a top 5 team in the conference. Meanwhile, St. Francis of Pennsylvania, outside the top 250 in terms of points scored, points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's really a one-dimensional team. You've got one guy that gives you north of 4.2 rebounds per game, Eli Wilborn, 9.5 points, 7 boards per contest. Cam Gregory, 13.5 points, right around 2.5 assists, 1.2 steals, and shoots 35.5% from 3-point range. But outside these two guys, you just don't have too much of anything. And then you've got Raheem Solomon along with Aiden Carpenter on the flip side for Sacred Heart. They both come in from the Metro Atlantic. They're combined to be able to give you about 16 points per contest, and it is a Sacred Heart team that has been okay with regards to being able to guard the 3-point arc, especially when they've been at home. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.5% from 3-point range. This does balloon north of 35% in a roadside shoot court environment, but just don't have guys for St. Francis of Pennsylvania. They're really able to bomb it from 3, and for St. Francis of Pennsylvania, at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from distance. So it is a circumstance where I did set Sacred Heart as a favorite of 7. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with regards to the total, I did set mine at a 143 with Nico Galletti either being injured or playing this game and being a little bit hampered. I do think that takes down the scoring a little bit, and I just frankly don't think that St. Francis is going to be able to do their part with regards to the total. They have scored 61 points or fewer in 3 of the last 5 games, and for the Sacred Heart bunch, 67 points or fewer surrendered in all but 2 of their conference games, including winning 79-67 last time around against St. Francis of Pennsylvania. In that game, Galletti, he was the top scorer in that game for Sacred Heart among their starters with 18 points. So going to be taking a look at the total under, and willing to lay up to 6.5 with Sacred Heart. 306.541, 306.542. NJIT plays us Bryan. Bryan, an 8.5 point road favorite. Total on this game is 152 to 152.5 with Bryan. I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite as well. So with the current number at 8.5, waiting on a little bit of line movement. I was seeing a bit earlier in the day, a bit of different numbers, so we shall see how this moves. But this is an NJIT team that they have been rough, to say the least. It's an NJIT team that is ranking outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've been able to get a little bit of production out of Elijah Buchanan. Buchanan has been able to do a solid job being able to give the team in that neighborhood about 11 points, 5 boards per contest. Then if this is an NJIT spot where they're able to get 9 or more, as I was seeing some 9s out there a little bit earlier, I would be willing to buy in. And the biggest reason why is that Adam Hess has been able to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. He's starting to give this backcourt a little bit of something with a steal, 11.5 points per contest, and it's an NJIT team starting to clean up the turnovers, about 12 turnovers per contest. They go up against a Bryan team that is also outside the top 325 with regards to rebound rate. Earl Timberlake, he's bringing sexy back, 9 boards, 14 points, 1.3 steals per contest, and the Sharif Groves Bullock, 40% 3-point shooter with 19.5 points, 5 boards per contest, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy Bryan team. It is a Bryan bunch. They have been a little bit better with regards to their defense. They've given up 74 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 AEC games. With the way that this conference has been playing out, that's actually not too bad. And I will say for NJIT, they've given up 70 points approximately in 3 of their last 4 games. The defense has honestly been a little bit better for the team. They do have to compete with the Bryan team that shoots it relatively well from 3-point range, and NJIT, they have not been good with their 3-point shooting defense at 340th in all of college basketball, but that's mainly on the road. At home, opponents are shooting just 29% from 3-point range against them. If we can get back to a 9, I'm going to be willing to take the points with this NJIT team. I think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time on the glass, despite the fact that Bryan has a really bad rebound rate. But that said, this is a Bryan team that they also do turn the ball over north of 12 times per contest, and I did set my total at a 152.5, at a 152 or less, looking at the over. Bryan playing at warp speed, top 10 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game, and at 9+, taking a look at NJIT. 306.543, 306.544. You've got Stetson playing against Austin Peay. Austin Peay is a underdog of 4 points. Total on this game is 143.5. When it comes to Austin Peay, I did set them in the spot as a 2.5 point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a Stetson team that they do a great job of bombing it from three-point range, and Jalen Blackman has been one of the top scorers in all of college basketball. With Mr. Blackman, he is shooting well north of 40% from three-point range, in the top 10 nationally with regards to points per game, being able to clock in with about 21.3 points per contest. But DeMarcus Sharp is the most well-rounded player in this game. 7 boards, 4.5 assists, 18 points per game, and last year led qualifying players in all of college basketball in three-point shooting percentage at 54.7%. Literally has not made a three thus far this season. One of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life, but it's because Austin Peay just needs them to do other things. Meanwhile, you still have Jamonta Black and Isaac Haney, a pair of guys who give you between 11 to 11.5 points per contest, shooting well from three, and Haney's now shooting 48% from distance. It has been pretty stark with that regard. It is an Austin Peay team that they're looking to slow things down. They're outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, and when it comes to this Austin Peay team, they've done a really good job of locking down the three-point arc. They're 34th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and that's the Achilles heel of Stetson, as you've got Aubrey Gasterse, who's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. He's really the only guy that gives you anything whatsoever on the interior. Meanwhile, this is a Stetson team that they certainly are giving it up from three-point range, with Stetson, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 197th in all of college basketball, so you do have your issues there. It has been an Austin Peay team that certainly had their issues on the glass as well, but they do a nice job being able to value the ball, just 9.1 turnovers per game. Both of these teams looking to play slow and controlled, and because I do think that Stetson is going to have a much tougher time being able to make their threes than in most days, I do think that Austin Peay going to be able to hold up in this spot, despite the fact that Austin Peay has actually scored 77 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's a Stetson team that they have scored 71 or fewer in 4 of their last 5. I think things get slowed down with Stetson's inability to be able to hit threes against this good Austin Peay defense. So set my line at 2.5. Won't take the 4 with Austin Peay. Set my total at 140.5. So also looking under 306.545, 306.546. New Hampshire plays us Binghamton. Binghamton is an underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 153.5 to 154 is your total with Binghamton. I did set them as an underdog of 10 points. So here at the 6.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's a New Hampshire team that I really do like. Clarence Daniels is one of the best mid-major players in all of college basketball. He's supplying nearly a double-double with 20 points, 9.2 rebounds per game. And then you've got Ahmad Robinson, 5 boards, 5 assists, steal and a half, 16 points on 37.5% three-point shooting for a New Hampshire team that actually does a relatively solid job on defense. New Hampshire is number 8 in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Binghamton certainly cannot say that with this Binghamton team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This team is clocking in 282nd, and for New Hampshire, again, it's a little bit tougher for them on the inside, but still 119th in the country with that regard. It's a Binghamton team that they do have a guy, Timo Chenry, who comes in from Quinnipiac. He's been able to do a solid job being able to give the team in that neighborhood of about 15 or so points per contest, so I like what he's been able to bring to the table. And then on top of that, you've got the Syracuse transfer, it's Samir Torrance, who's been one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball. Torrance has been able to supply about 9 points, 7 assists, 6.2 rebounds per game, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but this team has collected. They shoot 30.5% from 3, 65.5% at the free throw line, going up against a New Hampshire team that they're just absolutely running in and gunning in, and yet at the same time, they allowed just 58 points to UMBC. They've given up 62 points or fewer in each of their last 2 games. Meanwhile, for Binghamton, the defense, it has certainly went awry, to say the least, for them against D1 competition. This is a team that's now given up at least 79 points in 6 out of their last 7 games. I do think the New Hampshire going to be able to put up a very big number against them and get the job done. I set my number at 10. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with New Hampshire. I did set my total at 152. It does feel like New Hampshire starting to slow things down, turn over a little bit of a new leaf with that regard, though I do think that they are going to be able to get to 80 against this Binghamton team. So going to be looking at the under and going to be willing to lay it with New Hampshire. We wrap things up with 306.547, 306.548. Florida Gulf Coast plays us with Lipscomb. Lipscomb, a 2-point road favorite. Total on this game between 146.5 and 147. Set my total 146.5. So you're at the 147. Diving in on the under. It's a Florida Gulf Coast team that is in the bottom 100 in terms of total possessions per game. And with Lipscomb, going to be willing to lay the number. Florida Gulf Coast, one of the most random teams in all of college basketball. They pull off a win against Florida Atlantic one night, and then the next night, they find themselves in the Atlantic Sun standings at 2-3. So this has been a very strange team, to say the least. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries as well. Isaiah Thompson has missed 8 games this season. He's their number 2 scorer, being able to supply the team with 12.5 points per contest. He's been back in the fold recently for the team, but has scored 10 points or fewer in his last 4 games out there. He's clearly not 100%. You've got Andre Weir, who's missed 14 games. He's one of their top rebounders, so Zach Anderson has had to do it all. 13.5 points, 5.5 boards. As a versatile big man, he's shooting 52.5% from three-point range, but This is also a Florida Gulf Coast team that has had some mondo issues being able to guard the arc. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, 326th in all of college basketball. And they now have to go up against a Lipscomb team that, because they're without Jacob Onyesovic, their top rebounder from a season ago, they really have had to go into bomber mode from three-point range. Owen McCormick, he's a 6'9" gentleman that comes in from Presbyterian, hasn't been able to give you a lot on the glass. He's only been able to give you about 3.5 to 4 rebounds per game, but chips in their 10 points, shoots 39% from three-point range. This is a Lipscomb team that their top 6 scorers, 5 of them shoot at least 37.1% from three-point range, all while turning the ball over just 10.9 times per contest. One of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball is Will Pruitt. 6'3" do-it-all player, has been your best rebounder, 13 points, 3.5 assists, 6 rebounds. He's a little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy, but I do think that Lipscomb going to go on the road against an incredibly inconsistent Dunk City team that, despite the fact that they've got Keyshawn Kellman giving you about 7 rebounds per game, and Florida Gulf Coast does have a little bit of a leg up on the glass. One of their best attributes on offense has been the fact that they have been able to get some second chances. They're about 144th in the country with regards to rebound rate. I do think that Lipscomb still gets the job done. I do think that with Florida Gulf Coast and how slowly they play, that's going to be a little bit to their detriment going up against a Lipscomb team that they certainly have been giving it up on defense. 77 plus points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, but this is also a Florida Gulf Coast team that has been just completely mind-numbingly strange with regards to their offense as well. So, semi-total 146.5, diving under, and with Lipscomb willing to lay up to 2 with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Ky McKeon of the Three Man Weave for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Ky McKeon of the Three Man Weave for joining me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.